In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide podcast with Luke Bona. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Look at this, it's episode 129. Hello and welcome to another Bonafide extravaganza with a huge cast and a huge budget, not really, and the millennials there in her favourite brown jacket. It's the Bonafide podcast with me, Luke Bona. Look, it really only works if you jump in and contribute. So come on, because this is all here for you. It's all about you, folks. Send your thoughts in to community@bonafidepod.com or leave us a voice message on 0291289311 and follow, subscribe, share, tell everybody you know all about us because we love to give you something to think about. We don't tell you what to think. And you can watch the episode on video, on Spotify, and of course on YouTube.
The tube.
Now, we're just a little bit exhausted today because we've just got back from... Hang on.
Luke's putting on his casino truck show truck cap at the moment.
I have to adjust it at the back, but...
He doesn't really have the head for it, if I'm completely
No, I'm not
honest.
Anyway,
He's not a trucker cap guy.
but here it is.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Blue and white cap. It's pretty nice, isn't it?
Well, it's very flash. Casino truck show. It was an eye-opener. 550 trucks, over 40,000 people. The injection into the local economy is enormous. And we found out that you can't get accommodation anywhere near it. So we were lucky enough to be generously supplied a house by the general manager of Richmond Valley Council. His name is Vaughan McDonald. Now, luckily for us, his kids have all sort of grown up and gone away. And his wife disappeared with the golden retrievers for the weekend. And so we had the house. He's a very lovely bloke. How generous was he?
Yes. And Vaughan, I've left my toothbrush behind, so
what?
chuck it out. I know, I left my toothbrush. Don't you hate that? When you get home from someone, you realise you've left something behind and it's like, oh, it's gone now.
It's gone now, Kelsey. You've got to kiss that one goodbye. I've got spare ones here next time you're over. But we had a wonderful time. And, I said Vaughan McDonald, the general manager of that council. But also I met a wonderful man, and I wish I had more time to spend with him. And he's the mayor of Casino, and his name is Robert Mustow. Now, Robert and I had a connection. And well, first of all, he's apolitical. So it's very rare that you have senior members of council who don't belong to a party. But he doesn't. He is in local government because he loves his town. It's his town. But the connection, Kelsey, was basketball. Now, I want to get Robert on the podcast down the track to talk about his love for local government. But I said, how did it all start? What lit your fire? He said, well, I was a very keen basketballer. And Casino and Lismore and surrounding areas was very strong in basketball back in the late 60s. But we didn't have an indoor court. I said, well, no one did. You know, I grew up playing basketball on asphalt. And he said, I wanted to build an indoor basketball court to attract more teams, to maybe have carnivals here where we would attract teams from around Australia and around New South Wales. And if you build it, they will come. And he did. And he got into the local community. And, of course, I played competitive basketball all my life. And we knew so many of the same people. And we knew people who had coached, who had represented New South Wales and Australia. And we got chatting. And I met him on the Friday night at the sponsors' dinner. And so I ran into him again on the Saturday. And we got lost in conversation. And I wish, had we stayed another day, Kels, and had I known about Robert Mustow, I would have taken up my basketball boots and a pair of shorts, and just the two of us could have gone to his indoor basketball court and just had a shoot around and had a chat.
Shoot some hoops.
And we would have shot some hoops together. And I'm going to do that next time. But anyway, my hat goes off to the people of Richmond Valley Council who made us very, very welcome. And I can't wait to go back. What a wonderful town. Coming up on this episode of Bonafide, he's back from overseas, David Littleproud, our man on the inside. You know where David's been, Kelsey?
No idea.
His wife is Japanese, and his mother-in-law, who is 92, is in Japan, and they went to visit. And it's a very, very interesting story about Japan, the way David sees it, Australia's relationship with Japan and how it's grown since World War II. You won't believe where David's wife and family were from. I'll tell you, Nagasaki, where the second bomb was dropped. His wife's father knew that the war was coming to an end and that the Americans were getting closer and closer, so he moved them out of the city because it was a big industrial area to where he thought they might be safer, only days before that bomb was dropped.
Gosh.
It's an interesting story coming up. We're also, with David Littleproud, going to be talking about the fuel excise, which is back on, and petrol will be going up. As of today, Kelsey, about 16 cents a litre. But David's got some really strong thoughts, talking of the truck show, about how the trucking and heavy vehicle industry is being affected by the Strait of Hormuz. And look, we all are, but he's got some interesting thoughts on that. Also, the latest poll, which shows One Nation is back on top again. The coalition has had a spike in popularity, and the government has taken a bit of a dip. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the price of housing in Australia. Housing prices have dropped off. Is that a good thing? Well, if you're trying to get into a house, it is. If your house is your investment and your super, not so much. But we'll have a talk about that and a few other issues. That's coming up with David Littleproud. Rob McKnight from McKnight Tonight. Rob McKnight's podcast is just going gangbusters, and you can see him on YouTube. He drops 3 podcasts a week. The Alan Jones trial gets underway today in Sydney at the Dowling Centre. He is facing a number of charges, about 22 of them. There should be about 70 witnesses coming forth. It's going to take, I reckon, years, or certainly months. It's not a jury trial. It's a judge-only trial. He faces some very serious allegations, and we'll have a talk about that. We'll talk about Kyle Sandilands and his death threats and the future of breakfast television in Australia and his tip for the Logies, which are coming up on Sunday, the 16th of August. So we'll talk about that. We are also going to talk to a man who is a leader in the Jewish community in Sydney, Alex Ryvchin, and his thoughts on the Royal Commission into anti-Semitism, where it's going and how Australia is going to change, or is it? He's a fascinating character, and we'll also have a look at that. And we'll have some fun along the way. So strap yourselves in. There's something for everyone. The Bonafide podcast, where we don't tell you what to think, we give you plenty to think about.
And of course, Luke, you will be hearing the live Truckie Tuesday segment. That's going to be coming up later on.
We're up on the stage.
And who joined us for that, Luke?
Well, we're up on the Fergo, CJ, General Manager of Richmond Valley Council, Vaughan McDonald, and Roddy was also there, Rod Hannafy. And 1,000 people in front of us. It was an engaging conversation. We brought back the quickie.
Yeah, we did. We did. I loved, Mum said that she was just walking around the crowd and saw someone with a Bonafide t-shirt on.
Yep. And she stalked him. And we took a photo. And you know what he did? He asked me to sign the back of it.
Really? Oh, who wants that?
It might go up in value. He could sell that on eBay for a fortune. Look, we met some great people. And what a wonderful feeling. And I'm going to have more to say on this later with David Littleproud and during the podcast. But having spent a lot of time in Bathurst and witnessing the Bathurst 1000 Festival, which is huge and great, and I emceed it every year for many years, and had a lot to do with the organising of it. Sometimes in Bathurst, after 9 o'clock at night, things could get a little bit rough because it was a big war between Ford and Holden and a lot of alcohol. The feeling at the Casino Truck Show, completely different. Yes, you have people from all areas. There were trucks from Tasmania, from Perth, from everywhere. But every truckie, male or female, are in that industry together with the same fights, the same problems, the same financial woes, the same logistic issues, the stress on relationships. And what I found, Kelsey, was that it's a brotherhood. They all drive different trucks. They all drive for different people. There are tanker wankers. There are turd herders. There's mud carters. There's milk trucks, old and new, but they're a brotherhood. And it was a fantastic feeling, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nice.
Something to think about.
So today, drivers all around Australia are bracing for more expensive fuel. Some fuel stations today had already put the price up
Yeah.
by 16 cents a litre or more, and they've put that price up on fuel that they bought at the old price under their feet at the service stations, which is wrong, which is just wrong. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But, God, can we hope that fair trading and the ACCC can really keep an eye on this, because we need all the help we can get. But there it is. Price of petrol's going up.
What's the average price of petrol now then?
About $2.
What can I expect to pay?
Okay, you can expect today $2.20 about, and if people find it cheaper, let us know. It could get up to about $2.60, depending on the fuel station. I know. It's not.
And I guess this all is kind of dependent on what's happening
in
with
Middle
the
East.
war. God knows what's happening there. I can barely keep up with the changes. The rest of us that have got nothing to do with it just reap the consequences of it.
I know, we're at their mercy. There's nothing we can do about it, because what else are we going to do unless you have an electric vehicle? So you're right. We don't have much say at all. And it puts the price of everything up, including everything that's in a trailer behind a truck. And that's just about everything. We'll have more to say on that, I promise, a little later in this podcast, but we'd love your feedback. And there's something I'm going to mention with Rob McKnight a little bit later, Kels, is amongst our topics is the fact that Gina Rinehart is in the process, we think, of taking legal action against the ABC. Now, this is a really interesting topic. It's about free speech. It's about, should the ABC be gagged? Has the ABC, under the umbrella of satire, just been mean and nasty and vitriolic because the producer and filmmaker that made what we're about to show you said, I just don't like Gina Rinehart. Now, Gina Rinehart has launched legal action. There's a 4-minute clip which aired 3 weeks ago. It's part of the ABC's Race Around the World series. And it ended with the voiceover message, when the revolution comes, will you hide under the bed, or will you know exactly how to shove a stick right up Gina Rinehart's butthole? Stirring it round, mixing her guts up nice and smooth to make one big sausage roll, to make something out of nothing. Is that funny? Is that satire? Or is it just mean and nasty? And should the taxpayer be funding this sort of content? It's a really, really tricky question, because the ABC, I don't think, should be gagged. They should be balanced, and they have a charter that's often broken. Is that just mean and nasty? What point does it prove? Does it make you think? Let's play just a little of what went to air in the ABC.
Revolution comes, will you hide under your bed? Or will you know exactly how to shove a stick right up Gina Rinehart's butthole, stirring it round, mixing her guts up nice and smooth?
It's a bit vulgar.
There's a bit of it there. Now, Kelsey, your comment was that's a bit vulgar, but does that mean that the ABC needs to be gagged over that kind of material? No. But if you were Gina Rinehart, would you be offended and would you want to sue?
Be a bit butthurt, but I don't know. I don't think it's anything to sue over. I mean, I guess it comes with the price of being a public figure, right? People are going to parody you. They're going to mock you. They're going to make fun of you. They're going to praise you. You know, she gets a lot of praise from other sides of the media spectrum as well. So I don't know. I just kind of think it comes with being a public figure. They're being mean. I'll say that, and obviously the visual picture of it isn't something I really want to think about. You know, I don't know what it would feel like to have mean things said about me in this way. So I don't know. It's hard, but I don't think she should sue over it.
I do worry about the Barbara Streisand effect on this, and I've explained this to you before. Many years ago, there was a publication, and they took an aerial shot of Barbara Streisand's house, huge mansion. And she sued because they invaded her privacy. Well, as soon as she sued and made a fuss about it, millions of pictures of her house were everywhere, and it became even bigger. So what she was fighting against was now available to everybody, and she made a fuss about something that maybe she should have sat on, because her making the fuss blew it out of all proportion. And maybe if Gina Rinehart does sue the ABC, more people will see this clip than ever before, like we're now playing it, and it might have the Streisand effect. You see where I'm going?
The creator of the segment, contestant Kate McGuinness, apologised via the ABC on Thursday, claiming no intention to incite violence against the prominent figure was meant. The sense of humour featured in each of my films on the Race Around the World program is farcical, Miss McGuinness said.
But interesting, Kelsey, the person whose comments really brought this to light was one of the highest profile ABC presenters, Lee Sales. And Lee Sales actually questioned it and saying, is that really... I know. So I think maybe...
Look, obviously this wasn't written by staff ABC writers. This was written by a contestant on a show who clearly the joke didn't land. She probably is feeling very embarrassed about it. I would be feeling very embarrassed about it if I was her. Is it worth suing over? I mean, I suspect this probably has more to do with suing the ABC than it does have to do with the comments that were said.
Oh, you're spot on. That is very, very insightful of you, Kelsey. I think it's more about the ABC and Gina Rinehart's frustration with them being a very left-leaning media service when they're supposed to be down the middle. Their charter says they have to be objective, and a lot of the times, and I agree with Gina there, a lot of the times they're not. However, I do worry the Streisand effect will now happen, as it's already, because now we're all playing the clip. And to be honest, if Gina Rinehart hadn't threatened to sue the ABC, we wouldn't be talking about it here.
I suspect Gina kind of wants us to be talking about it.
Anyway.
Because there will be people that would be outraged by this, right? And she wants more of those people to make more of a case. So,
But then she's going to have more detractors saying, look how thin-skinned she is, She should be able to... I know. I would have left it alone. But that's only me. Hey, listen, how many people do you know who have a second job? Aussie workers, more than ever, are looking for a second job to make ends meet. Well, that's no surprise. The cost of living has priced us out of some of the things that we would probably like to think are luxuries, like coffees. But, if you've got children and you want to work, the cost of childcare is astronomical. But more Aussie workers are looking for a second job. There's exclusive data that's revealed the best paid casual jobs, millennial, that don't require highly specialised skills. So, in other words, these are jobs that are available to most Australians. Shall we go through some of them? And I want to know your thoughts, and I want our listeners to let us know. Do you have a second job? Did you need specialised training or education? Or could you just walk into it and do okay? Massage therapists. You don't need a certificate. You just can become a massage therapist. I've noticed where I used to work at World Square in Sydney, there's a lot of Thai massage therapists open there. With a very special ending, apparently.
Stop it.
Well, that's what's happened. That's what it is.
You don't know that unless you've been in one, have you?
No, I spoke to people who've been to one.
Yeah, bull.
Anyway,
bull on that one.
Massage therapists. You can be a massage therapist. Fitness instructors. They're on the top of the list. You can just be a fitness instructor, Kelsey.
You can't. I mean, you don't technically need training for that, but you should get training for that. You can get training for that, but I don't want to do that. Okay, they reckon, according to this poll, Kelsey, that you can get up to $43 an hour being a massage therapist or a fitness instructor. I don't know if this is true. This is according to the latest poll. Retail outlets. You can go work in a shop. They teach you how to flog a pair of shoes or a pair of jeans or a jacket or whatever it is they're selling. You don't need real training, in-house training. Bars, cafes. I mean, you can do a barista course, but you didn't do a course and you were a barista. I did courses. I did lots of them.
But did you have to do a course to get the job? You do if you're serving alcohol. You need a responsible service of alcohol certificate.
You don't need to, but usually the people that provide coffee to the shop want you to go do training with them so you know how they want their coffee served. So anytime we changed beans to a new provider, we would go get training.
So they reckon that working in retail, in bars and cafes falls at the lower end of the pay scale, earning between $31 to $33 an hour, according to the data from job platform Seek. How much an hour were you on when you were working with that dickhead up the road who didn't believe in masks? What was...
Oh, I can't remember.
What were you on?
I cannot remember. I think it was between 28 and 32. I can't remember. It
and
was a while
cash?
ago now.
Was it cash?
Yeah, it was cash. Yeah.
Did he have anyone on the books?
I think he had exactly what was legally required, not to fly under the radar.
Yeah.
And then everyone else was not.
Do you remember I went up to get your mum her soy chai latte one morning and you were serving? And I said, gee, they obviously don't do their police checks for employees here. You remember I said that really loudly and you weren't impressed?
Pretty sure you did it almost every time you went up there.
So I didn't let it go once. I had to milk it.
Yeah.
Soy milk it.
What a surprise. You're milking something.
I had to soy or almond milk it, didn't I? What's your second job? Did you need training for it? And does it pay well? Please tell us. We want to know. Give us a call, 0291289311, or send us an email. What is your side hustle? And did you need training? Now, Kelsey, you're in charge of listener mail. What do we got?
So we got an email from Dean Luke. He heard you talking about this particular album, and he was at a record fair recently on the Central Coast. He bought it and sent us a photo. The Newcastle song by Bob Hudson.
Don't you ever let a chance go by, oh Lord. Don't you ever let a chance go by. Anyway, up in Newcastle, they got very strange mating habits. All the young Sheilas at Newcastle would walk down the main street, which is called Hunter Street. The name would become obvious later on in the song. And all the young blokes of Newcastle would drive down the main street, Hunter Street, sitting 10 abreast in the front seat of their hot FJ Holdens with chrome-painted grease nipples and double reverse overhead twin-cam foxtails. And they'd lean out the window and say really cool, suave things to the Sheilas on the footpath, like, "G'day, how you going? Will you do it?" And one day, the coolest of them all who got to sit on the window was young Normie. Anyway, there you are. The Newcastle song, Bob Hudson. We need to get Bob Hudson on. He is a character, a great songwriter, wonderful musician, and a brilliant broadcaster who was on the ABC in Sydney, 702 2BL for many, many years. And I love him. So we need to get Bob Hudson on soon. I'll get onto that.
Now, we also posted a clip from your chat with Joel, the shark hunter.
Oh, yeah, Joel, the shark hunter, the shark jaw restoration.
Hunter shark jaw restoration.
Yeah. What was the feedback? Because this guy's very outspoken and he doesn't like talking to mainstream media because he reckons that Channel 9 stitched him up or something. But he spoke to me.
And he said he's not an expert. He's just somebody that is around sharks almost all day, every day. And he said in your chat that he wouldn't be surprised if beaches had to be closed, 2 to 3 days a week in summertime with the drones. Now, this is just what some of the feedback was. Patricia said, Australia is known for its beaches and outdoor life. Once they stopped culling sharks years ago, all these attacks are happening. Numbers have grown out of proportion now, and it's only going to get worse. A human life is worth more than a fish. Bring back the cull. So that's what Patricia said.
Yep.
John said, yep, I rarely swim in the ocean these days. I tend to get out to where there's 3 to 4 meters below me. And this one day, I just felt this weird feeling, like I was being watched, not from shore, a cold chill, like someone walked over my grave, not to mention the time I went fishing at the harbour and a seal pops onto the boat ramp with huge holes in it from a white, the classic bite pattern a la Rodney Fox. So there are people out there noticing these sharks. And David simply said, when surfing becomes Russian roulette, it's cull time.
Yeah. Well, I'm not an expert either, but every local where we live here in the northern beaches that surfs regularly says they're seeing more sharks than ever. They're talking about bull sharks being the big problem, not necessarily great whites, which is kind of what we grew up terrified of because of the movie Jaws. But, they're talking about bull sharks. Anyway, that's what Joel's saying.
Just quickly, Luke, because this just reminded me of something. Did you know that the Volkswagen has a Roo badge on its cars? So you know how you're always talking about the Jewry?
Yeah.
So Volkswagen, they have introduced a world-first car-connected accessory. And so you know the VW on the front of a Volkswagen?
Yes.
They've essentially turned that into a Jewry, right, that, emits a sound that deters kangaroos. And what's cool about this is that it's GPS fitted, so it changes its sound based on where you are in Australia, because obviously there are 16 different species of kangaroos, 16 or more, and so it changes the repellent sound based on where you're located, so the correct sound is being emitted for the correct kangaroo.
So different kangaroos respond to different noises. I thought nationally it was just...
Yeah, so it connects to an internal app that matches your live GPS coordinates with regional kangaroo distribution data.
I did not know that.
How cool is that?
That's cool.
I feel like that's a very good. That's something an adult that I would go, oh, okay, Volkswagen, I see what you're doing there. Now we got this message from Ingrid. She said, Lara, who is an extended family member on Graham's side, I'm assuming a husband, is competing tonight at the Commonwealth Games in the hammer throwing competition, and we're very excited for her.
Of course you are.
We saw this message after the hammer throwing happened, and we're very excited to report that Lara got a bronze in the final. Lara Roberts, you go, girl.
We salute you.
We salute you. Now, Keith left us a comment. Another amazing podcast. You should do these on location episodes more often. Would have also been nice to see Luke and Kelsey sitting side by side on the one camera, just like the Sunrise crew does. Keep up the great work. I think we'd kill each other.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen.
No, we'd kill each other. And we have some more funeral songs, Luke, just to finish us off. Brent's is AC/DC's Highway to Hell, which I think is
I
brilliant.
mentioned that one. Yep.
And Fee's funeral song, which I also think is brilliant, is I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Peas. Now, Luke, I don't think you'd be familiar with that, but the people who are know that it is a great pump-up song and not what I would expect, but a good funeral song.
Now, listen to me, millennial. I just gave you a little burst of the Newcastle song by Bob Hudson. I want you to give me a bar so I know what you're talking about. Sing me a bit of this song. How's it go?
I got a feeling, ooh, ooh, that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. You know that song?
No. Thanks, Kelsey. Well done. Coming up, he's back and he's got a lot to say about Australia and where we're at the moment and where he sees it going. Our man on the inside, David Littleproud.
They brighten my day, got that bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the look on a blues.
Well, it's been way too long since we've had our man on the inside, David Littleproud, with us here on the Bonafide podcast. It's been over a month. He's been away in Japan, and we'll hear about that in just a second, but a lot going on back at home, and I'm dying to get inside his head and find out how he sees the state of the nation. So he's with us now.
Yeah, good to be back, mate.
It's great to have you back. There's a bit to talk about, but I just want to say you went to Japan to visit your mother-in-law. Is that right?
My grandmother-in-law.
Your grandmother-in-law?
Yeah, so she's 92.
Yeah.
She lives down in Yamaguchi, or a little town outside Yamaguchi, which is down south of Hiroshima. She actually used to live in Hiroshima. My wife was born in Hiroshima. Her father was an Australian over there on the oil rigs, and her mother was working in the oil rigs for Mitsubishi in the office, and they met, and that's how Amelia was over there. And so, yeah, her grandmother's 92. They call it Bachan.
Wow.
I think it's called Oba Bachan, is in Oba Ji-chung for the grandfather, but because they can't say the Oba Bachan, they just call them Bachan. So she's a grand old lady, 92, so we had a bit of time down in Yamaguchi prefecture, and then kept going down into Nagasaki. I actually really have an interest in the World War II history. I think that generation are the greatest generation of all for what they went through and then what they rebuilt. So I went to Okinawa and then down into Ishigaki and Nagasaki, where the second nuclear bomb was dropped after Hiroshima. In fact, Amelia's grandmother, she was about 8, living in Hiroshima. Yeah. And her father, because it was an industrial centre, her father took the family out of Hiroshima only about a month or so before the bomb dropped, because he could see that the Allies were advancing and thought that Hiroshima would be a significant target because it was such an industrial place. So took them 30, 40 Ks out of Hiroshima down onto near an island or the beach. And obviously the bomb went off, but then went back to Hiroshima and helped rebuild it. So really interesting to go over there. And then to go to Okinawa, where the Okinawans, interestingly, didn't like the Japanese either. So they saw themselves, they were being terrorised by the Japanese and they didn't like the Allies. It's really interesting. You get to go down into some of the caves where the Okinawans were actually trying to survive because they were pushed from one end of the island to the other. And Hacksaw Ridge, so you remember the movie? That's there.
Yes.
And I can tell you Hacksaw Ridge is very steep on one side. It is where the Americans were trying to get up. It is, the movie probably done it pretty significant justice. It's Desmond Dodds was the American pacifist who saved, I think, over 75 US Marines fighting there on Okinawa. So very interesting, but it's a great country. I think there's a lot for us to learn from it. Just they live on 2 simple real principles: personal responsibility and respect. And so that respect is for one another. You don't have to be, you can be a minority, you can do whatever you want, but there's a code in which you live. You don't shove it down anyone's throat. You just get on. You go into public. You respect other people's space. So you go on the train. There's no talking on phones. You sit there quietly. You don't yell and scream or push people. There's an order to the way that they do things. You step aside, and they've got it all orderly set out. And the personal
manners.
Yeah, it's just straight manners. And the personal responsibility. I mean, you walk down the street and they're fixing the footpath. They don't shut the footpath off. The workers just sit there and start doing what they're doing, and they expect you to have some common sense and walk around them and give them space. And you go to any of the things there. They don't put big barriers where you can't go near anything. We went to a lighthouse, and there was under construction around it, and you just walked around it, and there was no barriers for you to stop you from falling over. Because if you fall over, well, that's your problem.
Japan is on my hit list. I do want to go and visit, but I've been told for Australians it's very expensive. Is that true?
Well, so I'm not big on staying in Tokyo or the big cities. So we like to go out into the regional areas.
Yep.
So Nagasaki, Yamaguchi, Kagoshima, really down south. And so you get really decent motels. Well, like we stayed in motels that were like 120. Some of them were $80 a night. And they were very, very nice motels. Like, they were, in Australian terms, they'd be 4-star.
Wow.
If you want to stay in Tokyo, you'll cop it. The food is cheap. The grog's cheap. Our accommodation and tucker and grog was pretty darn cheap, to be honest. And it's dear to get around the train. They've made the train a lot more expensive because of tourists. But what they do now, you can just get a plane like you can here pretty cheaply. But it's really worth going. They are getting swamped by tourists a bit. There was a lot of Chinese that were there. Fukuoka was another place we went to where the Chinese, because it's close to China and Taipei, they flood into those parts. But get a hire car and drive around. They drive on the same side as us, same road rules as us. You don't need to stay in the big fancy motels in the big city. Go out in the regional areas. And when I say regional areas, those cities are still 3 and 2 million people living in them. They're big cities, but you drive through all the paddocks of rice and wasabi and those types of things.
Okay. I'm glad that the beer's cheap, because 2 Japanese breweries own most of Australia's best-selling beers, Asahi being one of them. Listen, I wanted to just go back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Do the Japanese people resent Australia being an ally of the US that dropped the 2 bombs? What's the feeling like all these years later?
No, I think there's a respectful acknowledgement both ways. Hiroshima copped it in terms of a bigger footprint than what Nagasaki. Nagasaki's quite hilly, and so there was about, I think, 17,000 people were killed in Nagasaki, whereas Hiroshima, I think it was like 70 or 80,000. You can stand right underneath where the bomb actually detonated, and it detonated about 700 metres above the ground. It didn't hit the ground at all. They actually detonated above so that the spread was further. But Nagasaki itself, interestingly, wasn't the original target.
No,
and what happened?
No. It was because of weather. It was because of bad weather and visibility.
Yeah, totally. And so it became the secondary target because they couldn't get into, and I think it was Yokohama that was the second one, which is very close to Tokyo. And when they couldn't get it, they went for the second target, and that's when they got Nagasaki. And it was a very industrial town as well. I think from memory, it was Mitsubishi had a big industrial arms factories there. So that's why Nagasaki became it. But the Japanese people, understood that there was wrongs perpetrated on both sides. It was war, but they don't talk about it a lot. In fact, it's apart from those 2 peace museums, one at Nagasaki and one at Hiroshima, there's not a lot to in terms of even the stuff in Okinawa. Hacksaw Ridge was pretty well just it's at where an old palace was, so it's pretty low key. But you can go down into the tunnels where the civilian and the Okinawans run that, and there's an old army base there that you can go down into the Japanese tunnels and have a look at. They don't do it as much as probably what we do. It's very interesting to go over there and see it, because obviously, that was a fierce conflict in the Pacific, and the Japanese, obviously, that nuclear bomb is something that really does resonate with those in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and most of those communities are very strongly against nuclear weapons, as we are.
But they're huge consumers of nuclear power, which is another thing. Do they have a problem with nuclear power? Are they concerned? I mean, Fukushima was a big disaster, but the Japanese consume nuclear power.
Yep, and they will continue to. In fact, they don't see it as a problem. In fact, Japan is the example you should use for an energy grid. They will have about 30% of their grid will be renewables, and then the balance is Australian coal, gas, and about 26% will be nuclear energy. They're reopening all their nuclear power plants and building a new 1,200 megawatt nuclear power plant as well. So they've got a mix. But the crazy thing in this is that their coal, their gas that they burn comes from Australia. And their energy is cheaper than us. This is the insanity. And what they're doing is they're actually capturing the carbon, putting it on a boat and putting it down a hole off the Philippines, and they can still get cheaper energy than what we can. So the Japanese are a country we should learn, not just in terms of values and principles, but also the common sense approach that they treat their energy grid with. And they've got a new Prime Minister. She's a force of nature. When you talk about monoculture and those types of things, she definitely is going down that path. They want to preserve their culture, and they're getting tougher on tourists that don't respect it. And so they should. When you go there, you should go and live by their values. So I think Japan's a country that Australia should look to in a number of examples on values, on energy, and how they run their society. I think there's some big lessons for Australia there that would return us to just some basic principles of personal responsibility and some respect.
Look, I'll get away from this, but I will say there's always been an ongoing debate as to whether 2 bombs were necessary, where one may have sent the message. My father he turned 18 in 1945 and he did 2 years of national service and he was going to New Guinea. And he said that second bomb saved his life. And God knows how many others. It's a debate that goes on. We can talk about that in more detail on another day. But it's fascinating you've spent time there. And thanks for the travelogue. Hey, listen, let's bring things closer to home. Well, the Coalition's enjoyed a 4-point increase in its primary vote, according to today's poll. It's lifted it to 22%. It's the best result since March. The Greens have slumped 4 points to 10%, but One Nation's resilience continues. We're still a long way from the next federal election. How do you read this?
I think they're going to bounce around these levels for probably the next 12 months, to be honest with you. I think what you're seeing is that they don't really like any of us. No one has a clear majority, and they're angry. They're going broke, and they've lost hope. They've lost hope in a government that really is inflicting more and more pain, and their only solution is to take more of your money to try and to patch over the fundamentals of what I just talked about. What they've fixed in Japan is energy. Energy is the economy, and in Australia, it is energy and transport. And, when we talk about today that, we've taken all that excise relief off motorists, I think what the government should have done is kept the relief for the heavy vehicle road user charge. That is not inflationary. That actually continues to put downward pressure on prices at the checkout for every Australian, because we're a big decentralised nation. And if we don't have a transport industry that's competitive and being able to survive, and if you look at the number of companies that have gone into liquidation, unfortunately the transport sector represents more than they should there, because they're being squeezed from both sides, from suppliers and from retailers. And they're the ones in the middle that are copying it, and they need some support. And I think we should have kept that support for the heavy vehicle road user charges, kept them off. That actually is not inflationary. That actually means that it puts downward pressure on prices. I understand the government, and we would have only done this temporarily too, but the conflict in the Straits of the Hormuz is still going on. It's still raging on. I think you'll see it continue to go on for some times. Trump is going up, sort of drops bombs for 30 days, pulls up, and then tries and has a ceasefire, because that's his way of getting around Congress. See, if he goes further than that, it actually becomes a war, and then he needs congressional approval. So I think until this is sorted, we are going to continue to see that the Straits of Hormuz are going to cause a lot of problem for oil supply in this country. And that means us being at the bottom of the supply chain are going to cop that. I'm in Winton at the moment. I got back last Saturday, got in the car, and we've been to Birdsville and back, and we just turned the corner of Birdsville and got to Winton. And, talking to the local baker this morning, just said as soon as that fuel stuff was going to be cut away, we could see the drop in the tourists again. So we need these people out here. Otherwise, these towns go backwards. because ag can't carry it all. So the government needs to understand that is real pressure. And I think these are the things that the government that pose the opportunity when you get back to your original question about polls, is that if you've got policy, but you've got to fix the fundamentals. And I think Australians have got to understand that whoever takes over from Labor is going to have to fix those fundamentals, and you're not going to be, there's no silver bullet to do it straight away.
Just getting back to heavy vehicles and what this conflict is doing to the price of groceries getting from one point A to point B. Guess where we were on the weekend?
Yeah, well, I would have thought the truck show at Casino.
Well done. And we were swamped by people who missed me on the Triple M night shift program. I had no idea. I knew that we connected with truckies. I had no idea. 40,000 people, 550 trucks, they've had to cap it. And I got to meet Richie Williamson, who was the member for Clarence.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, we were at the sponsors night on the Friday night, and I met him. The trucking community's really hurting. I mean, everybody is.
Look, it's doing it real tough. And I've got to say, unfortunately, and I've seen them in Queensland, there's a couple in New South Wales, big family transport industry heavyweights that a couple of sadly have gone under. And there are others that are really in a lot of financial trouble because the pressures that they're getting. The pressures that they're getting from state governments around regulation, and then when you look at the costs that are being thrust upon them, and their supply chains of tyres and fuel and everything keeps going up. Their labour units keep going up, costs go up. So this is where they're being squeezed. They're being squeezed by big corporate retailers on one side and suppliers on the other that they're moving between. And this is what you got to understand. Well, I mean, everyone talks about energy being the economy. It is, but in Australia, as decentralised as we are, transport is as well, because the industries that pay the bills don't come from metropolitan areas. They come from regional areas. The stuff that goes onto your plate from a paddock to your plate comes from regional areas, or they come from a pit to go to a port. And you need trucking. You need heavy industry to be able, heavy transport to be able to move that. But when they're under pressure and they go under, I think we've got a real emerging problem that we could see much of the transport sector go under. And if that happens, then product doesn't move and product goes up in price. And this is the problem that we've got. And I think we've got to understand that the trucking industry is so important in this country. And for us in regional Australia, it's our lifeblood. Outside affordable energy, if we don't have affordable transport and have reliable transport, our industries will diminish as well out here. So, I think this is where governments need to understand the importance, and that's why it's so great to see that so many people turned up to the truck show at Casino. The industry is still. I've got some big transport. I've got Wickham's in Warwick. They're big freight, and Frasers are the cattle livestock movers. Probably the two big guys one of the two big guys in Australia. But they're doing it tough, and this is where governments need to understand the important role they play. And this is what you've got to fix the fundamentals of. If you don't fix the fundamentals of energy and transport, then what happens is our productivity goes down and our costs go up, and you ultimately will pay for it.
Okay, I want to bring up something that I heard on Channel 7 Sunrise this morning. Tanya Plibersek was on with Matt Canavan, and one of the topics was the latest poll, which we've just discussed. And Matt Canavan was asked, would the coalition do a deal with One Nation to get over the line at the next election? And he said, well, we would do whatever it takes to get rid of this terrible Labor government. I can get Kelsey to play the correct audio, but it was along those lines. He said it would be a two-way street. And he said, then he also went on to say, yeah, but hang on, One Nation's targeting a lot of National Party seats, so, there's a bit of ground to be made up. What do you make of doing a deal with One Nation, giving each other preferences and kind of getting into bed together to try and oust the Labor government?
Well, at the last election when I was leader, I did a deal with Pauline on preferences. And I got to say, I didn't need a piece of paper with Pauline. I sat down in her office, she and I talked it through. We wanted her preferences in lower house seats. Some of those were where we were competing against the Liberal Party. In return, I was prepared to give her our second preference on the Senate tickets, which was important to her. The Liberal Party couldn't do that. They didn't want to do that in some of the metro areas, but I was. I have no issues with Pauline, so I was able to have a deal with her around preference sharing. And I think, my simple principle is, and always has been and was when I was leader, was that the Greens are last and Labor are second last. And then you work your way up from there. But I don't see any issue in having a deal with Pauline. I think Pauline Hanson's been very upfront with the Australian people. She's made it very clear that she'd provide supply to a coalition government. She doesn't want to be in the ministry because then she can't be independent. And I think that's not a bad thing. And I think Pauline's been very upfront about that. And I don't see any of the hoo-ha or any of this. The dealings I've had with Pauline Hanson have always been honourable ones where if she says something, she will do it. And
okay.
So that's what, and I would have no worries taking the support of supply from Pauline Hanson and One Nation to make sure that the coalition had a government and that we got rid of Anthony Albanese. That's the best thing for the country, then we should be signed up to it.
Okay, David Littleproud, I've got to talk to you about something else that's affecting a lot of Australians, and it's been going for a little while now, Australian property prices. They've entered a broad downturn. Let me have a look here. National capital city values dropping 1.4% in the June quarter, accelerating further in July due to consecutive interest rate hikes and federal tax changes. The Sydney impact, David. Sydney median house prices fell 3.3%, about $60,000 over the quarter to 1.73 million. The national spread, the downturns expanded beyond Sydney and Melbourne, with Brisbane and Adelaide also recording price declines. Is the government policy, the 5% deposit and all that stuff, is it doing its job? If the price of houses are falling, isn't that what the government set out to do? And is that a good thing?
Well, the government didn't set out to reduce prices. What they said is they'd slow the increase of housing. And just understand on the other side of this, while people who want to get into the market would want to see prices come down, there are people whose equity, whose retirement is tied up in housing, and they've had their assets devalued because the government has taxed it. What you need to do is have responsible policies around making sure, one, interest rates are affordable. So just understand the government has added over $30,000 a year to the average mortgage in this country because of rate increases, because they haven't been able to control their spending. But it's also about supply. And that's about supply in the housing market. Now, the federal government doesn't control that directly, that's state and local government, and they've been failing at that. But the federal government does impact it by the amount of immigration they bring in. Because if you bring in 1.4 million people, that's a city the size of Adelaide, which is what Anthony Albanese's already done. He'll go towards 2 million by the time he gets to an election. What that does is increase demand. It fuels demand because these people need a roof over their head. And if you bring in people that don't have skills to build homes, you just pour them in, then you're going to have a housing crisis, and that's going to push prices up. So there was a better way to do this that gave productivity to the economy, slowed migration, bringing in the right people with the right skills to build the homes we need, and controlling expenditure so that that you can afford homes. And that's where they became unaffordable, because houses were going up because demand had gone up, but your real wages haven't gone anywhere. It's been chewed up by inflation. It's been chewed up by tax and by higher interest rates. So this is where a more sensible approach, a nuanced approach, would have got to it and would have protected the asset values of many of those and would have slowed the increase in housing prices. But that's okay. But just understand there are people on both sides of the equation here, and that's what government should do is calmly move through this to get the best outcome for every Australian and give those young Australians wanting to get into the housing market some hope.
All right. Hey, listen, David, I know you've got to go. Thank you so much. I tell you what, it was so gratifying and rewarding to go to casino. I'd never been there before. And I used to broadcast into Lismore on the and Ballina. But it's a great town. And do you know what? I'll just say this. I was involved in the Bathurst 1000, as you know, for about 15 years. Let's do it. September 84, November 1999. That's a few years. And the radio station, Bathurst Broadcasters, was part of the consortium, which was Bathurst Broadcast, because we owned the commercial radio rights. Bathurst City Council, Bathurst Broadcasters, the ARDC in Channel 7. So I was at quite a few meetings putting that circus together. Let me just tell you this. The Bathurst 1000 Festival, come about 9 o'clock at night on the Saturday, things could get a little bit narky, alcohol, and the war between Holden and Ford. At the truck show, it was impeccable. Do you know what it was? You got truck drivers that drive for different companies, drive different trucks. Some of them do livestock, some of them do fuel, some of them do hazardous materials. They are involved in all aspects of the transport industry, but it's a brotherhood.
Yeah.
And a sisterhood, because there are more and more women. See, we interviewed CJ, the female driver. God, she's a dynamo. But what I found with this huge festival and busking and bands and plenty of alcohol available, Traveller Beer was one of the sponsors, the behaviour was immaculate and it was a brotherhood. Am I making sense?
Yeah, totally. And you know, and that's the thing is, this is a serious profession. They're carrying and in charge of serious machinery worth a lot of money. And that's before you put the freight on the back. These are serious people, but they're doing a big job and a dangerous job at times. And so there's that respect. There's that respect of professionalism amongst them, and this stereotype of the Jackie Howe beer belly truckie is one of an era gone past. These are professional men and women that do a pretty amazing job in trying circumstances at times. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And they don't all listen to Slim Dusty. They listen to you, mate, as I understand.
Yeah. So. Hey, that's right. That's what Rod Hannafy said years ago. He said, you've got this national show. Have you thought about dedicating some time to truckies? Because not all truckies listen to Slim Dusty. Some of them do listen to Led Zeppelin and Cold Chisel. And that's how it started. But listen, David, it's good to have you back. Let's catch up again soon. I'm going to do more homework on Japan because I do want to go and have a look. So you and I will talk off air and you can give me an itinerary.
And my wife can give you an itinerary, mate. She's very good at it. Obviously, being born in Hiroshima, she can give you all the inside running. It's very good. And got to say, I was surprised how cheap it was, but quality motels and the grog and tucker. You can find good tucker and grog pretty cheap every night.
Yeah, when I was on 2GB, Graham and Sandra Ross, they used to do the Cherry Blossom tours.
Oh, yeah. No, Graham well.
Yeah, Graham, I've known him for a long, long time. I used to work with him. But look, David, you take care. Good to have you back, and we will catch up again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, mate.
David Littleproud.
It's the Bonafide crew, talking truth from the care. Stories from the black tie.
Well, there's a lot going on in the media at the moment. My God, it's a good time to talk to Rob McKnight, who we haven't had on for a little while. His program, McKnight Tonight, is growing so quickly. It's like it's been covered in swift grow and then some. He joins me from his studio right now for another chat on the Bonafide podcast. Please listen in and watch on YouTube Rob McKnight and his program because it's just excellent. G'day, buddy.
That's very kind, mate. I always appreciate your kindness.
Oh, no, well, it's genuine. I don't have to say it. It's genuine. Your insight's unbelievable. You've been in the media for 30 years more, producer of television programs. You know all the inside information. People talk to you, and I think it's because they know you'll give them a fair go.
Yep.
But you also have incredible insight into what's going on and I guess what influences people who consume mainstream media. But it's not all mainstream anymore. And that's why you and I are doing what we're doing. And the face has changed, hasn't it? Where more and more people are picking and choosing what they watch or what they want to listen to when they want to.
Well, it's really interesting what's happening with YouTube. Video podcasting has become one of their biggest consumed items on the platform. It is growing so rapidly. And people are now watching it on their big screen TVs. So they're not just watching podcasts on YouTube on their mobile devices because you've got a YouTube app on all your smart TVs. They're watching it through the app. People who watch my show will be watching it through their TV. So they're sitting having a full broadcast type experience, and the game is completely changing.
It is. And we don't have to answer to ACMA. We still have to respect the law. So
yes.
Libel, defamation, etc. Contempt of court. We don't want to, but we don't have to answer to ACMA. Well, I guess if we're sponsored, which I am, you still have to worry about the mad effing witches. And we'll get to them in just a second and the latest with Carl Sandilands. But the news today is that the Alan Jones sexual misconduct trial gets underway today. It's a judge trial. It's not a jury trial. And I would have thought that Alan Jones, who was at the time, back in the late 90s and the 2000s, was untouchable. on radio and one of the most influential broadcasters in the country, and you can argue that. I don't think you can. He was.
No, he was, and he was untouchable. You know, you couldn't say a thing against him because all hell would come down on you. Now, look, there are some serious allegations being made about him, of which he denies all of them.
And a lot of the charges have been dropped.
Yes, there's an interesting part of that. When charges are dropped, it makes it sound like there's no case, but that's not usually what happens. What usually happens is that the prosecution will focus on the winnable cases. Well, what they think are the winnable cases. And so rather than having a big spread where it can get confusing, they want to nail it down to specific cases, specific charges that are easier for them to prove in court. I'm not here saying there's guilt or innocence either way. I'm saying how the court process usually works. So I think we have to be careful about jumping to conclusions about the dropping of some charges. What we need to do is let the courts take place and see it through. But you worked with him, didn't you, Luke? What was your impressions of the man?
I thought he was a very strange character. You know, he was highly intelligent, extremely right-wing, which he didn't hide. I mean, that was part of it. I mean, he's run twice for the Liberal Party, failed both times, was a speechwriter for Malcolm Fraser, coach of the Wallabies. If you look at Chris Masters' book, Jonestown, there are some really strong allegations there, and Alan didn't challenge it in court. And the only reason I can think, if it was all wrong, or at the very least grossly exaggerated, why wouldn't he challenge it? And that was probably because he didn't want to go into a witness box. But he had a controversial history at the King's School, Parramatta. What I did see of Alan Jones, and I'm going to say this, 2GB, before Alan came over on the 4th of March 2002, and I remember that day like anything, 2GB was producing great radio, but was hammered by TWU because they had Lawsy and they had Alan, they had Mike Carlton, they had Stan Zamani, and they were a powerhouse. And we were very proud of the product that we were producing, but I have never seen an audience move quite like it when Alan joined 2GB March 2002. And he made us all successful. So I have a lot to be thankful for. I'm not saying what we were doing was bad, but they brought listeners to what we were doing. I mean, back in those days, the only two programs that really rated on 2GB was Brian Wilshire at night and The Garden Clinic on a Saturday and Sunday morning with Graham Ross. So
which is still going. It is interesting because he certainly turned 2GB around, and it's hard to remember that because it has been a powerhouse ever since. The idea that one man changed the fortunes of a station, it's true. When Carl and Jackie O left Today FM and started the KISS network on ARN, it changed Sydney radio, and Today FM, which had been number one on FM for so many years, has never recovered from what happened there. And the same
and TWE never recovered. And in fact, the day he broadcast that first morning, they apparently over at TWE were dancing in the corridors saying the witch is dead, and they were celebrating. I said, they're not going to be celebrating for too long. They never, ever recovered. But
isn't that interesting? Because that's what was happening at Today FM. They seemed so happy to lose Carl and Jackie O. And it really was a case of history repeating itself.
That's right. The only other time I've seen an audience move in such enormity was when Lawsy used to go. I mean, when Lawsy went from TUW to TUE to 2GB back to TUE, he took that massive audience with him, and I haven't seen anything like it. But I'll give you an example of what I did see with Alan. Do you remember there was a man who was very, very unhappy with the family law court situation, and he climbed the Harbour Bridge and stopped the traffic?
Yes.
And he rang Alan's program. And from memory, it was somewhere around 7:20, between 7:15 and 7:30. And Alan had him on. And it was the Alan Jones story of the day for Sydney. And so they ran the audio of this fellow talking to Alan in the 7:30 news, as they should have. It was 2GB owned that story of the day. They ran it at 8, but they didn't run it at 8:30. Alan stormed out of his studio, went round to the newsroom, and I won't name the young girl who was editing that morning, and I'll tell you off air, and you can find her and talk to her on your show if you want, but I don't want to bring up bad memories, but I witnessed this. He was furious that they didn't use his story and his actuality in the 8:30 news. And he went into the newsroom, stood over this girl who was at the editor's desk and screamed at her, called her incompetent, He said, I'm going to get on to Russell Tate today. You will not have a job at the end of today. You're an imbecile. And she admitted she stuffed up. And she did. She should have run with that story. She made a mistake and she apologised. But she didn't start crying, which is what I am sure he was trying to do. And he said, you will not have a job today. I'm getting on to Russell Tate today. He was screaming. You could hear it down the corridor. You know 2GB. You could hear it down the corridor. And the then gutless program director didn't get out of his office. I told him, I said, you better go calm this down. And so his panel operator was playing ad after ad after ad, might have even played a song. He had a guest waiting, and he was still there at nearly 8:45, berating this girl.
Wow.
Berating this young girl. But she apologised. She admitted it was a stuff-up, but he didn't reduce it to tears. I have never seen anything like it. I have never seen anything like it. He had a point.
Did she keep her job?
Yep. But it was horrible.
Sounds it. But that's absolute power, isn't it? He knew he was untouchable. That's an example of when you absolutely have the power, you are too big to fire, and you
I've
think
seen
you
it with
own the world.
I've seen it with other presenters who have strong table bench thumping opinions, and they're paid a lot of money to have these strong opinions and to yell and scream and carry on. And it's very hard then to cross over the line and say, well, hang on, I've got staff here that are real people. And management encouraged that behaviour because that was the behaviour that sold ads.
And what about the idea, though, that it's passion and emotion? I think there's a problem belittling a person, but I've been in situations where I've ranted and raved. I don't feel like I've ever had a go at a specific person. But there may have been something that's gone wrong
And in the heat of battle on live radio, sometimes it can get away on you. I get that, in the heat of battle. But this was over the top.
Well, it sounds it. And also, he's not a man who backs down.
No, and he's used to being right. I remember a Christmas party, and it was at the Maritime Museum down at Darling Harbour. And Alan had his private Christmas party. I forget, he booked a room, could have been at Star City or could have been wherever it was. And one of his guests, and again, I'll tell you who that guest was, a footballer, behaved really badly, had too much to drink, and it made the papers. There was a contretemps. There was a drama involving the husband of a sales executive at 2GB, and it got leaked. So anyway, at the 2GB Christmas party, he turns up and he gets up on stage because the guy was a great orator, and and you loved his speeches. Well, he had just come from the Nepean horse races. I'm standing there, and if you've been to the function room there were these big round pillars every so often around the room, and I'm standing behind them because I got the giggles because he said it wasn't we've had a great year and we're a great team and we're going to move forward, and it was scolding each and every one of us for not picking and sticking and leaking stories to the media. And he said, we all want to help you pay your mortgages. And look at the loyalty I get. When I was with Malcolm Fraser, we had a saying called pick and stick. Well, and he said, look at this wonderful place that management's put on for you. And then he said, I actually don't know where we are because I get driven to these things. He didn't know where he was. He'd just been to the races. I get driven to these things. Look, I don't know where we are, but look at this. This is this wonderful, and this is the loyalty. This is the thanks we get. He was so annoyed that what had happened at his private Christmas party had made the papers, and we got a scolding from the school headmaster at the Christmas party. I thought it was so bizarre. You know when you're at school and you wanted to start laughing, but if you got caught,
you're not allowed to.
So I hid behind the pillar and I made contact with a couple of other people, and it was so over the top and so bizarre. I got the giggles, but I didn't want Alan to see me laughing. Anyway,
I bet.
Anyway.
What's the hilarious thing about that is, of course, in a position like his, you rely on leaks from the government, the police force for your stories and everything like that. So it's a great irony, isn't it?
It's great to be leaked to, but not leaked about.
Yes.
So exactly what charges is he facing? It's going to take a long time. I think about 70 witnesses are going to appear. The allegations go back a fair way. I wonder how people's memories are. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Look, it really will be. And there's 22 charges, as you said. This will play over some time. We'll start the preliminary hearing today and we'll get an idea of where things are heading. And there will be discussions. There will be, the lawyers will argue about what can and can't be admitted into evidence. So I would imagine today would be a lot of procedure, but then we will watch with interest, shall we say, to where things go next. I'm sure the YouTube account will be viewed with interest, shall we say, with a lot of Jones's fans and critics who will be interested in this outcome.
The one good thing about that Christmas party, Rob, before I move on, was that the management at the time were about my age, and they had Richard Clapton. We had Richard Clapton and his band, so all the youngies went out into the veranda with the smokers, and so it was only people my age and the rest of us, and we had Richard Clapton to ourselves. That was a good thing. Anyway.
That's pretty cool.
It was bloody cool. Anyway, Kyle Sandilands, it's been revealed that he has received a death threat from someone pretending to be his longtime KISS co-host, Jackie O. Henderson. And it follows another threat that arrived by way of a handwritten letter. Can you tell us what's happened here?
Yeah, this is interesting because he's saying that the police have had to be called because of certain threats, which I find interesting because I would have thought that'd be Kyle's life along the road anyway, with controversial Kyle persona that we've had. But look, his streaming service is launching on Monday, 10th of August, and I think we're going to keep getting a drip feed of stories in the lead up to this. I'm not saying this didn't happen, but I'm saying that we're certainly going to hear more stories, and they're looking for angles as they get closer to launch. They're trying to make a big song and dance. One of the interesting things about his streaming service is that they're not allowing users to do a monthly subscription.
Right.
They're charging them an annual subscription of $99. And I've got to be honest, I went to the website and I went, $99, I'm sort of locked in. I want to have a look and see what it's all about. And
you wanted to dip your toe in the water before you bought the swimming pool.
Correct. And so I do think that's a bit of a stumbling block. Now, look, maybe people are doing it. There'll certainly be the media that are jumping in to see what it's all about, to write about it. But the Kyle and Jackie O fans, or the Kyle fans, yes, there will be some they don't care what the price is, but I think it's a bit of a stumbling block for people to sign up. I understand why they're doing it. They want to get money through the door. They want to start covering costs. They've got wages and all those kind of things. But if you've got the product, you should be confident enough to believe that you can sustain an audience, which I think Kyle would be able to do. I think Kyle has the potential to make this work. Now, I haven't seen the product of what it's going to be. I don't know, you've seen the McKnight Tonight Show I put on, which is a very, very heavily produced. I speak from the heart, but the graphics and everything around me it's a produced TV show.
It is.
I don't know how far they're going with that, if they're just sitting with big mics in, I don't know what kind of format.
It could be a bit Joe Rogan-ish, I don't know.
Yeah, well, Joe Rogan rates very, very well, but he was in the early days and he's on YouTube, so you can watch Joe for free and he makes his money through advertising on YouTube. I like that Kyle is trying to create an alternative streaming service. There's no problems with that, but we'll see what he delivers. But the $99 fee up front, that's problematic for me.
So let's talk about the man, what do they call it? The bromance.
Yes.
Between Kyle and Carl. Now, Carl Stefanovic now seems like a long time gone from the Today Show. They haven't recovered.
It has.
And Sunrise is absolutely lapping them. And you and I had a chat about this. Channel 7's always been very clever about grooming someone to take over.
Yes.
And that bar did it seamlessly and brilliantly. And Shervo was great, and they've got other presenters who they keep their profiles up there so that the audience, what's the old saying, Rob? So that they don't scare the horses with a new presenter that they go, who's that? The Today Show didn't do that with Carl. What is there hope for the Today Show? What are they going to do to save it?
Look, you can always turn these things around, but it's going to be difficult because we don't know who's going to be in the chair. There's not even a guarantee Sarah Arbour will be back. There's all these reports about Samantha Armitage taking up the role again. It seems to me that a lot of decisions are being made up high at 9. There's a lot of frustration on the Today Show at the lack of control they have over the show. If you can find the right person, if you can format the show, you can absolutely change viewing habits and listening habits, right? But you've got Steve Burling in there who's coming under a lot of pressure because his face is appearing in a lot of articles at the moment saying, that there's people behind the scenes are saying, well, you've changed all the presenters. nothing's changed. Ratings have gone down, but the guy who's been there through all of this hasn't changed, and, the same results keep happening. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. If Nine's still a bit of a boys' club. If you're liked by upper management, you're pretty safe when it comes to your role, unless you do something really outrageous, and even then, you're probably still safe. I would argue that the Today Show needs a reformat, it needs a rethink. It almost needs to revolutionise breakfast television again, the way Sunrise did, because think about it. Today had the market to themselves for decades. Sunrise came along, disrupted it, changed the format, and really Today has just copied it. And what has the show done that has evolved breakfast television? With Carl, they did find success when they had some good producing behind it. But realistically, even with Carl, they haven't been within a whisker of Sunrise lately, unless there's some big rethinking of the show. I just think they're just going to limp on, basically.
I've got to talk to you or ask your thoughts on Gina Reinhardt, who has threatened to sue the ABC over what's been described as really crude and vulgar comments aired on our national broadcaster funded by the taxpayers of Australia. Just to give our listeners and viewers some context, let's have a look at what the ABC ran.
Revolution comes, will you hide under your bed? Or will you know exactly how to shove a stick right up Gina Reinhardt's butthole, stirring it around, mixing her guts up nice and smooth?
So it's a 4-minute film titled A Very Relaxing Video, and it aired on Race Around the World program 12th of July and concluded with the filmmaker Kate McGuinness making a crude and offensive comment about Gina Reinhardt. Take us through this.
Yeah, so basically the filmmaker was talking about how we should all get along, and then as we saw, then started talking about putting
a broomstick up her ass.
Yeah, up Gina's ass. And look, you can get away with satire, but when Lee Sales called it out, she said, look, I really enjoyed it until you got the point where you were really personal against Gina Reinhardt, and you're talking about we should all be able to see each other's point of view. And the lady who was the filmmaker just said, yeah, but unless you're Gina Reinhardt. So basically, it's this idea that we should like everyone unless I hate them. And then I'm allowed to hate them. And I'm allowed to be derogative that way. Look, should it have aired? That's a really interesting question. There is an independence with the ABC, but it was a pretty vile attack that I don't think falls under satire. And I haven't really made any comments about this one because I am a believer in the right to free speech and being able to do those things.
Yeah.
But it is such a personal attack on someone who isn't a politician. She's certainly in the public eye because of her wealth. But where was the comedy on it? And I think that comment from Lee Sales when she asked about that, and the filmmaker basically said, there's no comedy. My take was, well, there's no comedy here. I just really hate Gina Reinhardt.
Yeah.
And
should the taxpayers be funding? Should the taxpayers be funding that? It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I'm not going about hate here, but I'm going for outrageous television. It was the beginning of colour TV in Australia with Auntie Jack.
Yes.
Now, my aunt and my parents, who eventually warmed to Graham Bond and Rory O'Donoghue and Gary McDonald,
yes,
at first thought, why is the taxpayer funding this ridiculous TV show? Well, thank God they did. Thank God they did. And out of that, we got Norman Gunston and Auntie Jack may not have been everyone's cup of tea, but it wouldn't have got a platform on any other network. And thank God it did. But it wasn't hateful. It was outrageous comedy. A big bloke with a moustache and a curly wig and a boxing glove and a dress who rode around on the black bike saying, if you don't tune in next week, I'll jump through the television and rip your bloody arms off, which was outrageous. So maybe that's a poor comparison.
But here's the thing. You're not always going to like what the ABC puts on air, and that's okay. But what you have to look at, if a male had made the same comments about Lee Sales, would it have been acceptable? Why is it okay for this artist to violently talk about Gina Reinhardt and shoving a broom up her bum, up her ass? And why if it was someone on the right who made that comment about someone on the left, there would be outrage and demanding this person be stood down and all that kind of stuff. So there's a hypocrisy going on where the same rules don't apply equally. And I think that is one of the problems that a lot of people are feeling, that on the ABC, it's okay to attack anyone who doesn't have the same left-leaning thinking as the people appearing on the ABC.
Would they have done the same thing if somebody on the right, if the ABC was right-wing, which it's far from, but it had to go at Twiggy Forrest, who supports the ALP with a lot of money? Would you with me?
It's okay to have a go at people. It's okay to mock people, but the violent talk and it's a very visceral image, the idea of shoving a broomstick up her ass, and what was the point of it? I think that's the question.
Yeah, how satirical was it?
Yeah,
or was it just hateful?
Yeah. Comedy absolutely has a place, and I don't have a problem with anyone mocking politicians or people in power, or famous people or infamous people. This just seemed just like an attack. It wasn't comedy.
And should the taxpayers be funding it? I'd run a poll, but I don't want to have to put up with people who hate Gina Reinhardt and get personal about her or her appearance. I don't want that hate shit going to my to my inbox, so I don't think I will. What's coming up on Rob McKnight tonight?
McKnight Tonight keeps going on Monday, Wednesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. at youtube.com/@McKnight Tonight. And on Tuesdays, we do Media McKnight on that YouTube page. And, I've got a story about how Netflix is treating workers who worked on the Australian version of the Willy Wonka reality TV show.
Right.
They did not treat them well, and certainly didn't treat them like they would American crews. So there's a bit of a story there. And of course, this week we're talking Kyle and, the whole Australian Idol thing. Did he walk? Was he pushed? I'm hearing some things to suggest he was pushed. And so I'm chasing those stories today, actually.
So we've got the Logies coming up later this month?
Yeah, they're coming up on Sunday, August 16. It's the yearly event. What's been interesting is that Lynn McGranger came out over the weekend in the Sunday Telegraph saying she'd been snubbed by the Logies, hadn't been invited. She's a Gold Logie winner, so she absolutely should be getting a ticket for life. I chased up this story over the weekend and found out, yes, she had been invited. Her manager confirmed she'd been invited. Now, she does have another gig on, so she can't go, but the whole claim that she hadn't been invited, obviously that's crazy. And so there's been a miscommunication, I think, between her and her manager. But why the Sunday Telly didn't know that and didn't ask TV Week about it is quite bizarre. After I started making some inquiries, they've amended their online story, but that whole thing's on TV Black Box anyway if you want an update.
I get bored with award shows. I really do. Do they rate? Do the Logies still rate?
Yeah, the Logies still rate. They're still a popular event. Yeah, they're still a very popular event.
Yeah. Prediction. Who's going to win the Gold Logie?
Do you know what? I really don't know anymore. I think that it's underwhelming these days, I've got to say. I find it underwhelming, and I think that, look, it'll probably be Robert Irwin.
Really? Yeah.
It could be, but I'm not. I think this is sort of indicating my level of enthusiasm because I'm just not that interested anymore. And I still enjoy watching them, but it's a far better party to go to than to watch.
Ali Langdon, Julia Morris, Lisa Miller. Remember Muster Dogs?
Yes.
You mentioned Robert Irwin.
I think for the readers of TV Week, Robert Irwin's just the easy one to pick.
Po Ling Yao, ABC. Yeah. Sam Payne.
He's a possibility because he's very popular. The way they come up with the final list of Gold Logie nominees these days isn't even down to the public. The networks all decide who they're putting up. That's why you get such a spread from TV networks. It's not down to... Remember once upon a time you would vote, there would be multiple rounds of Logies voting. You would vote for all the presenters and then that'd be whittled down. They go, okay, these people have got the most votes. They'll go down to the final 7, and it's not like that anymore. Now the networks say, you, and that's how it works.
How was Nat Barr and Shervo not in there?
Well, that's an interesting one from the presenter point of view because I've got to tell you, considering Sunrise is the highest-rated show, it doesn't seem quite right that they're not nominated for most popular presenter.
Is that a Channel 7 decision?
No, they were nominated and they were judged because there was some pre-judging for those categories, which I was part of. I will tell you I'm surprised that they didn't make the shortlist.
I'm amazed, absolutely amazed that they're not on the short list. Anyway, what would I know? You know way. Have you been to a Logies? You've been to a few.
Yeah, I've been to a few times.
It's a good
fun party.
Is it fun?
The first time I made the big mistake, got too drunk, ended up hugging Laurie Oates and sitting on Jana Vent's lap.
Oh, dear.
Second time, I didn't drink at all.
Yeah.
Third time, I found the nice balance.
Yeah, you sat on Jana Vent's.
With permission.
Have you got a photo?
I don't know. I don't think so.
That'd be one for your man cave wall. What did Paul Keating call it? The perfume
steamroller.
Yeah, Jana Vent, God. Hey, listen, Rob McKnight, we'll see you on our screens or in our ears, hopefully both, very, very soon. Love you, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Anytime.
I want you to meet, maybe not for the first time, because I have spoken to our next guest, I think, a couple of times. He is compelling. His name is Alexander Ryvchin, who is a Ukrainian-born Australian author, an advocate. He's a media commentator and a lawyer. And he is co-chief executive officer of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry. And he advocates on the Australian Jewish community, on behalf of the Jewish community. Now, the Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism is due to hand down its findings on the anniversary of the date of the Bondi Massacre, the 14th of December. And as we get leaked here in the media and hear the general public as to how proceedings are going, some of it's just horrifying. And I read in the Australian newspaper a couple of days ago that some of the witnesses have been threatened. There's been a warning sent out. And you would have thought, why do you need a legal warning not to threaten witnesses at a Royal Commission into anti-Semitism? But where is this headed, and is it going to solve anything? And the question I want to ask before we bring it back to what catapulted this, and that was the massacre at Bondi Beach on the 14th of December, is why is there so much hatred here in Australia when the grassroots of this hatred, and I use the word carefully, comes from the other side of the world. Anti-Semitism isn't the only hatred that is spread in this country because of conflicts happening in other places in the world, but this is what we're concentrating on today. Now, Alexander Ryvchin is with me. Unfortunately, we couldn't see him on the podcast today. He had to do it on the phone, but I appreciate him giving us some time. Alexander, welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. And please just call me Alex.
I will, but I was being polite.
Thank you.
Alex, I want to bring this back to the Royal Commission, which the government, incidentally, was hesitant to roll out at the very beginning and caved under public pressure. And I will say this, eventually it was bipartisan pressure, but why he was reluctant, you can maybe answer that. But let's go back a bit further.
Yeah.
Before we bring it back to what we're seeing here in Australia, we need, and the motto for my podcast, Alex, is I don't tell people what to think. I like to give people something to think about. So I need you to help educate me and my listeners. Okay, can we go back to the Middle East where all this has started? And I've tried to learn about the history of the Middle East. Who was in charge of Palestine first, the Israelites or the Palestinians, and what's the difference between the two? What is the history behind this holy land that has seen so much bloodshed over thousands of years, not just recently? Why has this hatred spread to Australia? I know it's a loaded question, Alex, so I'll let you take your time, and can you try and give us a bit of a history lesson first?
So in terms of a kind of quick history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the competing claims to the land. We know, and this isn't a matter of biblical tradition and religious belief, this is a matter of archaeology and history. We know that 3,000 years ago, there was a Jewish state or something akin to a state, a Jewish kingdom in roughly the borders of the state of Israel today, with a capital in Jerusalem. So we know that. The Jewish people exercised their sovereignty and self-determination. They weren't a mighty empire. They weren't a powerful, great kingdom. This is a time of great empires, of the Roman Empire and the Egyptian Empire and the Babylonians and the Persians. And the Jews had their own humble little homeland, which was set upon by different empires who were seeking to expand their borders and expand their influence, which is what was happening in the time. The Jewish kingdom eventually fell under the rule of the Roman Empire. The Jews rebelled when the Romans sought to suppress their right to exercise their traditions and practice their faith in the land. There was a Jewish rebellion, which in the end was pretty hopeless under the unbelievable power and might of the Roman Empire. And so around the year 70 in the Common Era, so in the first century of the Common Era, the Jewish kingdom is definitively destroyed. The Jewish temple in Jerusalem, which was the real focus point of Jewish custom and worship, was burnt to the ground, and the Jews are expelled. And they're scattered throughout the vast lands of the Roman Empire. Many are taken into slavery. Many are taken to die in the Colosseums, and so forth and so on. Some Jews remained in the land, but the organized Jewish homeland was at that point destroyed. So at this time, you have the Jews scattered throughout all corners of the earth. Some stayed in the Middle East in what became kind of the Arab lands. Some moved to Spain and those parts. Some moved further east, Germany and then Poland and Russia. And on they moved and they established their communities. And in some places, they were horribly persecuted and were expelled or murdered and moved on. In other places, they were ruled by benevolent kingdoms and rulers who gave them rights, and they thrived. So this was the experience of the Jewish people in this diaspora.
Okay,
scattered throughout.
Now let's talk about the Roman occupation. So you had a Roman Empire that recognized God, thousands of gods in inverted commas. And the Romans were basically polytheistic. And they adopted local deities, ancestral spirits and foreign gods into their culture. Now, we know about Jupiter and Juno and Neptune, Mars, Venus, Apollo, Vulcan, Mercury, Saturn, and the list goes on and on. I haven't got time to list them all. The Jewish religion has always recognized and worshipped one God, correct?
That's right. So what was revolutionary about the Jewish people is that we were the first people to pursue monotheism, which is the belief in one single, ever-present, almighty ruler, God, deity, that demands a rigid code of ethics and a moral way of life. That's what Judaism was all about. We had the 10 Commandments, which was revolutionary in itself. And then you had the 5 books of Moses, what we might call the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, which contains 613 commandments about how we live. And it's all about living your life in a communal, selfless way, not giving in to basic passions and impulse, but seeing yourself as part of a society, as part of a wider community, and living ethically. It's about personal responsibility. That's really the cornerstone of Jewish custom and law. You know, we talk now about the Judeo-Christian tradition, which is spread throughout the world. Islam as well is a monotheistic faith that came after Judaism. And we know, again, from historical sources that when Muhammad established his faith in the Arabian desert, he actually appealed to the Jewish elders that lived in tribes around him to take on his faith, which they rejected, and they stuck to their guns and they stuck to their beliefs. So Christianity and Islam emerge as the successor monotheistic faiths to Judaism.
Okay, because it gets so confusing, Alex. I wanted to talk about the Royal Commission. I'm going to bring it back home to Australia. I promise, sir. I promise. But sure. I'm just trying to establish a little bit of confusing history here because, okay, so you've mentioned the Palestinians or Arabs. You've mentioned Islam, but we talk about European Christian crusaders. You talk about Egyptian-based Muslim invaders, the Ottoman Empire, the Persians.
Yes.
And we can even go to the British Empire, 1920 to 1948. So the state of Israel and the land surrounding Palestine has forever been under fire. Is that fair to say?
It is. It has been under fire, and it fell under the control of different colonial powers and empires over millennia. But the only people who actually established a sovereign homeland there were the Jewish people.
Okay, can you explain to me what Zionism is? Now, my understanding is that Zionism is really a nationalist and political movement. It supports the creation, development, and protection of a Jewish nation state. Correct?
I think that's well defined. And it's linked to what we discussed a bit earlier with the Jews losing their land to the Roman Empire, being scattered to all corners of the earth. And then for 2,000 years, they sought to reestablish themselves in the land. And they did this in different ways. Some humbly took their meager possessions from wherever they lived in the Middle East or Russia. and migrated to the land and lived there quietly in small communities. Others sought to create a national consciousness and a national movement to ingather the Jewish people scattered throughout the world into a single body politic and reestablish them as a sovereign people and a sovereign homeland in their own land. And so the term Zionism, it's derived from the word Zion, which is one of the biblical names for, it has various meanings. So some apply to it the meaning of Jerusalem. It's a synonym for Jerusalem. Some refer to a hill in Jerusalem called Mount Zion. Others refer to the entirety of the ancient Jewish lands as being Zion. But Zionism emerges in the late 19th century in Europe, where anti-Semitism was at its fiercest. And its aim is to establish a Jewish homeland in the lands where the Jews had come from, with legal and political recognition of that land. That was the aim of Zionism. You then have, obviously, World War I around that time. At that time, what came to be known Palestine, and where the word Palestine comes from, when the Roman Emperor Hadrian finally expelled the Jews in the year 135 CE, he sought to he hated the Jews, he hated their culture and their religion, and he sought to permanently sever the tie between the Jews and their land. And the way he did that was he renamed Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina, and he renamed Judea, what had been called Judea, he called it Syria Palestina. And so what was the Jewish homeland ceased to be an independent piece of land and was tied to the wider region of the Levant, and it was effectively viewed as a part of Syria.
Right. Now, my understanding is, and I'm ignorant, I need education, but I understand that there are about 2 million Palestinians that live peacefully in Israel, and they live in mixed urban areas, and they share things like hospitals and schools, and there is social interaction with 2 million Palestinians living within Israel. Is that correct?
So when the State of Israel was established in 1948, which was pursuant to a United Nations resolution in November of 1947, which called for the establishment of a Jewish homeland and 2 states for 2 peoples, something the Jews accepted and the Arab world rejected violently. You then had effectively a civil war and then a war of independence, which sought to effectively crush Israel in its crib, to destroy this nascent Jewish state. You had shifting populations and borders and so forth. And when the dust settled, you had something like 2 million Arabs, Palestinians, living within the borders of the State of Israel. They enjoy full legal and civil rights. It's enshrined in Israel's Declaration of Independence and their basic law. If you walk down the street in any Israeli city, in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv Yafo, in Haifa, you often won't be able to distinguish between Jews and Arabs. Sometimes you will see traditional Islamic headdress and so forth and garb. You'll see mosques everywhere with minarets. There's hundreds of mosques in Israel. There's full freedom to practice one's faith. I have a lot of family in Israel. Their social circle, their colleagues, the people they went to school with, Jews and Arabs mixed. That's the nature of the country. So there's a great deal of propaganda and nonsense, among other things, accusing Israel of being an apartheid state, of systematically discriminating against its Arab population. That would be news to the Arabs of Israel, because they ascend to the highest offices in the country, including the Supreme Court, including all echelons of the medical system, the legal profession. You know, Israel is a flawed country like every other, but it's a liberal democracy, and it grants civil rights to all. And the Arabs in Israel enjoy the highest quality of life and the greatest freedoms of any Arabs in the Middle East.
So let's talk about that horrible day when radical Islamists went from Gaza into Israel and took those hostages and killed innocent people.
Yeah.
What brought that on?
What brought that on was a situation where Hamas was able to, over a period of about 20 years, embed themselves as the sole power and sole authority in Gaza. So prior to that, you had the more moderate but still problematic Palestinian groups like Fatah, which rules the West Bank. You had the first and only free and fair elections in Gaza held in 2005, which was won by Hamas. They then proceeded to take absolute power by purging their enemies and opponents, whether trade unionists or political opponents, shooting them in the streets, throwing them from windows, and effectively forcing them out of the territory. And they then grabbed complete and absolute control of that territory over every aspect of life in Gaza, from the medical system to the education system, housing, absolute control. There were a series of periodic wars, flare-ups, where Hamas would fire hundreds or thousands of rockets into Israel. They would attempt cross-border raids. Israel would repel that, and you would have sometimes a days-long, sometimes a weeks-long escalation, and then it would inevitably end in a ceasefire and the status quo would be resumed. Israel subscribed, I believe, to this folly, this foolish view that that conflict, that situation could be managed, that they could somehow live with Hamas embedded on its borders, and through their military superiority and their intelligence capability, they could ensure that nothing too horrible happened. And they would periodically have to deal with it in terms of low-scale wars, but that would be the end of it. Hamas, meanwhile, was diligently plotting away and scheming, particularly under the leadership of Yahya Sinwar, and they planned a mass invasion, a mass operation using an elaborate, extraordinary network of tunnels, using whatever crude or some sophisticated weapons they were able to smuggle in from Iran or build domestically. And on October 7th, they effectively invaded by land, sea, and air. They carried out some of the most horrific atrocities we've seen in modern times: beheadings, mass rape, systematic torture, sexual torture of women and young girls. You had Hamas fighters paragliding into a dance festival, the Nova Festival, and slaughtering young people as they enjoyed themselves. You had whole villages being besieged and Hamas fighters going house by house, slaughtering people in their safe rooms, binding parents to children with wire and setting them alight. And then you had some 250 people stolen, taken away into captivity. We've seen those images that seared into the consciousness of young women dragged by their hair or thrown onto the back of motorbikes. You see young women barely living, thrown on the back of pickup trucks and then paraded through the streets of Gaza as civilians line the streets and cheer and beat their bodies and spit on them. So this is something that really tormented and shocked not only the state of Israel, but the world and certainly the Jewish world. And it was felt very deeply here in Australia as well.
Okay. It was felt very strongly here in Australia. I think particularly when Grace Tame, former Australian of the Year, was on the balcony of the town hall chanting, and I want you to explain what this means for me. Globalise the Intifada, and we've all heard from the river to the sea. Can you explain, in your opinion, in your mind, what those chants mean?
So I think one of the problems we get into is that people will say, and I've heard Jason Clare, the education minister, among others, say this, that these chants mean different things to different people. It's really a nonsense. They have a clear historic meaning and everybody knows it. And the people that use this chant think they can be very clever and get away with it by saying, no, look, it has some benign meaning to us. It has a very clear meaning, and that meaning is deeply menacing. So the chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which sounds like a beautiful, noble call for freedom and equality. That is, it's derived from an Arab chant of, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab. And it emerges again post-1948 when Israel is created. And it's a call for the eradication of Israel. That's all that was ever sought. It was never about living side by side in peace or establishing a Palestinian state on some land to live in peace with Israel. It was about the wholesale rejection of Israel, of any return of the Jews to their sovereign ancestral lands, and the establishment of a wholly, exclusively Arab state in its place. And that has been exported to the West. In the 1970s, It was posited by the Arab leaders at the time, by the Palestinian leaders. They realized that they could no longer militarily topple Israel. They tried multiple times in 1948, in 1967, 1973. Israel withstood those attacks and in fact became stronger through them. And they understood that the way to defeat Israel, and this is their explicit proclamations, was by shifting public opinion in the West and then causing Israel to kind of collapse on itself by losing support and becoming economically and politically isolated. So this anti-Israel movement, which began as a military movement in the land to destroy Israel, then shifted to becoming a Western globalized movement pushed out through some militant trade unions, through university campuses, through human rights organizations, through sections of the media. They have ensured that things like From the River to the Sea have been laundered into respectability. The call for an intifada is even more explicit and chilling, because the intifada, as observers of the conflict will know, is a Palestinian uprising. But a Palestinian uprising does not take the form of civil disobedience or protest or a political movement. It takes the form of suicide bombings. That's what an intifada is. From about 2000 till 2005, when the peace process collapsed because the two-state solution offered to them at Camp David under Bill Clinton, which was rejected by Yasser Arafat, which was something criminal in my view. They were offered a state on virtually every inch of territory they wanted, with the capital in East Jerusalem, and he rejected it, leading to the outbreak of violence known as the Second Intifada. And that saw hundreds of Palestinian suicide bombers cross into Israeli territory, walk into nightclubs, shopping centers, pizza shops, cafes, and detonate themselves, strapped with explosive packed with ball bearings and rusted nails to maximize the carnage. And it killed hundreds and hundreds of people. So when people chant intifada, that's what they're supporting. They're not supporting peace. They're supporting violence and death. And when they talk about globalizing the intifada, it's not merely supporting it in Israel. It's not merely supporting the death of Israeli Jews. It's supporting the death of Jews globally, which is exactly what we saw at Bondi Beach on December 14th.
Okay, we're bringing it home now. And I want to say thank you so much for giving us your interpretation of where this is at, because there is a school of thought from people who are not anti-Semitic but believe that Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel now have gone from David to Goliath and are overreacting and are causing unnecessary death. Now, I'm just saying this is what some people will tell you, who will say, I'm not anti-Semitic. But I think Israel in its current state, incredibly powerful with a very powerful ally in the United States. Yes. And after the genocide of World War II, why wouldn't Israel, surrounded by aggression, not arm themselves to the teeth? And they've had to survive. Israel is a democracy and a sovereign state. Let's just all remember that. But let's get back to what some people would say is now a heavy-handed approach from Israel, and that just when all the ducks are in a row or the mice are in the hat with a peace negotiation, or at least an ongoing ceasefire in the opening of the Strait of Hormuz between the United States and Iran, off goes Israel again because of another terrorist organization also funded by Iran, and that's Hezbollah, which is next door in Lebanon. So explain that, if you could.
We could talk about that.
By the way, before we go any further, do you agree so far with what I'm saying?
I do.
And would you agree that sometimes it can be seen that Israel has gone from being David to Goliath?
Of course it can be seen. I wouldn't agree with that. But reasonable people can differ. And these are things that we can discuss, and reasonable minds can take different views on this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you have a country which finds itself in conflict, which is frequently a war, it's inevitable that people will commentate on that and take different positions. In terms of the Netanyahu government, after October 7, I was deeply critical of that government. My view was that government presided over the greatest security failure in the history of the country, and I viewed it as no longer tenable for it to remain. But things have moved on, things have changed, and of course Israel was going to wage a response. It had 1,200 of its people slaughtered. It had Hamas absolutely ascendant at that point in time and claiming that it was going to carry out more and more of these attacks. It was holding 250 people, including little children, hostage in dungeons underground. Of course, Israel was going to respond. Now, the nature of that response can be a legitimate source of debate and discussion. Some thought they should have gone harder earlier. Others thought they went too hard. And again, people will take different views. I look at that situation, and I've met with Israeli soldiers who fought in tunnels and on the front lines. They were placed in the most unbearable urban warfare situations of modern times, where you have this labyrinth of tunnels and tunnels and tunnels going deep underground with trapdoors and booby traps. Every single building in Gaza had been mined and booby trapped in preparation for this day. As I mentioned earlier, 20 years Hamas had absolute control over that territory, and they militarized every square inch of it, whether the people wanted it or not. They built no shelters to protect their people. They built attack tunnels to shelter their fighters and to menace the Israeli soldiers and make life as difficult for them as possible. Hamas, even though they're militarily far inferior to Israel, they dictated the terms of that war. They could decide whether to fight in open fields and open areas, man to man, or whether that fighting would take place under hospitals and schools and tunnels and residential buildings, which would obviously lead to civilian casualties. But Israel had a job to do. They had a mission, and that mission was to destroy Hamas, to prevent it from ever carrying out an attack of that sort again, and to rescue its hostages, all while trying to minimize civilian casualties and protect journalists and aid workers as best as it could. Did it in every single moment get it absolutely right? Of course not. It's war. War is unclean and gritty and difficult. And I'm not going to stand in judgment of these soldiers. But were they attempting to eradicate these Palestinians? Absolutely not. They were attempting to complete a military mission, which ultimately they did. The hostages came home, many of them in body bags. But the war was brought to an end. Hamas was effectively destroyed as a fighting force. Again, Hamas chose the terms of that war, and they chose to inflict that misery on themselves by firstly commencing that war on October 7, holding those hostages, and choosing to fight in dense civilian areas. It's on them entirely.
Okay, I'm just giving you the other side of not my opinion of the other side of the story.
Absolutely.
But the story you hear is that the Palestinians living within Gaza, they will claim that Israel was repressing those people living within Gaza.
Well, Israel
and calling Gaza an Israeli prison. That's what people say.
Well, I mean, they will say that, and they will throw any slur they can and any accusation they can. Palestinians were able to determine their own destiny. They were able to choose their own government and build up their society in any way that they chose. They could have done anything with that territory that was effectively theirs. Israel withdrew from it and had no further interest in it, certainly no interest in administering their lives. Israel's interest in Gaza is limited to ensuring that it poses no threat to Israeli life, and that's it. But what happens within its borders is entirely for the Palestinian people to determine. They chose a course. They chose a course of Hamas, which inevitably means misery and death. That's just the way things go. And if you invade your neighbor and commit vast atrocities and document them and film them with glee and relish, then expect some blowback, expect a response. Israel did what it had to do.
Like if you attack a hornet's nest with a stick, don't be surprised if the hornets come out and sting.
Well, that's right. That's right. And it's incredible because the supporters of the Palestinians in this country were rejoicing at October 7. You had scenes in Western Sydney with a sheikh standing on the streets of Lakemba with absolute unbridled joy on his face, proclaiming this to be a day of joy and pride and
celebration.
How happy he is. As a group of men shouted back Allahu Akbar. You had the far left pro-Palestinian activists in this country as October 7 was still unfolding, as people were still being burned and slaughtered and raped. They called this a day of humiliation for Israel and organized a protest to celebrate it. Within days, before Israel had even responded, they were accusing Israel of genocide, which tells you everything you need to know about those sorts of accusations. They're political, they're tactical, and they're completely divorced from the truth of the matter.
Why do you think it is? I am going to bring this home to Australia and the ways Australia deals with this, because I tell you this for nothing, and you would know this. We here in Australia hate it when a foreign hatred, war, a difference in ideology, religion, whatever, comes to our shores. We have a separation of the church and the state, and in countries that are radically Islamic, and I'll use Iran as an example, Syria, the church is the law. The church is the law. But when let's just go back, for example, I'll just give you one example of how Australians hate this stuff. Let's look at the Bosnian War. But I'll tell you what, let's look at the fall of Yugoslavia and the Croats and the Serbians, the Bosniaks, and bringing that hatred to Australia. We saw violence through soccer. We see, and Australians don't want it on our shores. Now, we saw Jewish synagogues being vandalised, graffitied and bombed and set on fire. How many Muslim mosques received the same, in your knowledge?
Well, see, this is the thing. And no matter how atrocious the attacks on the Jewish community in Australia have been, there are always people there seeing to justify them and say, well, this is all a natural response to Israel, to the actions and policies of Benjamin Netanyahu. I can tell you that on October 7, the Jewish community in Australia was shattered, broken, distraught, terrified. We experienced those horrors as if it was happening to us personally. Firstly, because many of us have family, most of us have family living in Israel that were caught up in this, but also it just triggered so much of what the Jews have experienced through their history. And we all relive that trauma and pain and angst. And in that heartache, what did we do? Did we call for the death of people living in other parts of Sydney who don't share our views, who might be Muslim or Palestinian? Did we march through those streets and burn flags? No. We gathered and held prayer vigils and sang songs of peace and prayed for the return of the hostages and an end to this war. That's what we did. Whereas another group of people looked at those same scenes of October 7, and it was the greatest day of their lives. It was what they'd been praying for and waiting for. And it gave them this feeling of ascendancy, where suddenly they could do whatever they wanted to do. And within literally hours of it, you had this rampant abuse and harassment of the Jewish community. We all know what happened at the steps of the Opera House. There were a dozen scenes of people walking past synagogues and making threats, of people at beaches threatening to rape Jewish people. Suddenly, these people who had long harbored this hatred for the Jews, but felt they had to suppress it, it all bubbled over because they felt that this was their moment. Hamas had created the moment where the Jews finally get what was coming to them. And they were determined to ensure that it wasn't limited to Israel, that it happened globally as well. And that's why we've seen what we've seen since October 7 in this country.
Okay. Now, I want to take you to something, an incident that you encountered at Archer Park.
Yeah.
When you were visiting the site of the Bondi Beach massacre. You were with a group of Sydney Swans players.
Yeah.
And there was, as Jason Morrison wrote in the Daily Telegraph, it can only be described as shocking.
Yeah.
It was a shocking confrontation at the scene of where 15 innocent people were killed. It unfolded at about 4:15 p.m. on a Wednesday at Archer Park, which was the location of the horrific attack.
Yeah.
Alex Ryvchin, you were there as an executive of the Council of Australian Jewry, and you arrived with some Sydney Swans players to hear from a massacre survivor.
Yeah.
And a woman confronted you. Can you take us through what happened that day?
So just to take a step back to explain why we were there. After the massacre happened, within a day or so, the Sydney Swans, along with other football clubs like the Roosters and I think the Matildas as well, got in touch with the community and said, we want to come down to the Bondi Pavilion, where virtually adjacent to the massacre site, you had this kind of makeshift memorial of flowers arising, and thousands of people would come through, individuals and groups and dignitaries, to pay their respects and offer support to the Jewish community. And the Swans came by with their full squad and their CEO and coaches to offer support for the community in a beautiful gesture. They then, when they had their home opener, they did a beautiful on-field tribute to the community. And then they got in touch with me and said, we want to make a visit to the synagogue, to which the majority of the December 14 victims belonged. And we want to just engage a bit more with the Jewish community. No fanfare, no cameras. And it was a beautiful gesture. And so you had Matthew Pavlich, the CEO, Dean Cox, the coach, had some players, some staff, some of the women's team as well. And then after they came to the synagogue, they wanted to see the massacre site. This was pre-arranged. And I had arranged for a colleague of mine at the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, a friend and a colleague who was there on December 14, who was shot in the back while fleeing the terror. He was going to take them through and explain a first-person account of how it happened, where it happened, and what it was like. So after we left the synagogue, my colleague and I arrived separately to Archer Park. We parked the car. We saw some news crews gathered there. We didn't know what they were there for, but it's not unusual because a lot of of documentaries and news
Sure.
reports are filmed there now. And it turned out they were there for a whole different purpose. Some bloke called Chad was completing an incredible feat. He ran from Perth to Sydney, and it happened that he was completing his run for 61 days, I believe, at that very spot at the time that we pulled up. So Evan, my colleague, and I, we approached the news crews just to ask them what was going on. They told us about Chad's incredible feat. We had a little conversation. Turned out we knew some of the journalists.
Yeah, Chad Aziz.
That's right.
Chad Aziz, yeah, he ran from Perth to Sydney. In fact,
right.
I think he became the youngest person to ever do that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I was told that he ran the equivalent of a marathon and a half a day.
Unbelievable.
For 61, just absolutely unbelievable. And as we were there, this woman approaches and she says, "What are you Zionists doing here?"
What?
I turned to her and asked,
"What?"
And I asked her what she'd said, and then she doubled down and said, "I want to know what an evil Zionist is doing here." And the thing that immediately struck me was...
Did anyone else hear this?
I'm pretty sure they would have, because we were kind of standing huddled around, my colleague and I and the journalists, and we were in conversation. Certainly the altercation that ensued, everyone saw it. Everyone saw it. There were police there who were doing their usual patrols, who then came up to speak to the woman as well. The journalists who were there began apologizing to us profusely, even though they had obviously no part in it, but they just felt awful at what had happened. The thing that struck me the most wasn't the words that she used, as obscene as it is to just walk up to someone you've never met before and call them an evil Zionist. And the word Zionist, again, Luke, you and I have discussed the history of Zionism and the conflict. That had nothing to do with what she said. She used it as a slur in the same way that people use Jew as a slur. It was viciously delivered and intended, but the fact that she did it in that place, the place where my friends were slaughtered, in the presence of my colleague who still has the scars, the 15 stitches on his back from the shrapnel wounds that he absorbed. It was just such an inhumane act, and I challenged her on it, which I believe was the right thing to do. And she just didn't back down. She just stood by her views, and that's it. But this is what we're dealing with, If anyone thought that the Royal Commission process would lead to this great dampening or this rehabilitation, hopefully long-term that will happen. But so far, I think all we've seen is anti-Semitism since December 14 rising and rising and rising. And we have these sorts of incidents happening all the time. And that's why I thought it was important to take a stand.
This is what I'm talking about, hatred coming to our shores surrounding something that's going on and has been going on for thousands of years on the other side of the world. And I talked about the downfall of Yugoslavia as well. I'll use that as an example as well. Australians don't want it.
Certainly not. Certainly not. The glorious thing about being an Australian is that we've come to these shores from all over the world, in many cases to flee conflict, to flee political oppression. And what we find here is the most remarkable, beautiful country with a brilliant national ethic, people of creativity and warmth and goodwill. And as long as you adhere to the laws of this land, as long as you give it a fair go, treat others with respect, you're afforded every opportunity. And being of a certain color or race or religion is a barrier to nothing. I mean, my family came here fleeing the oppression of the Soviet Union, which was oppressive to Jews specifically, but to everybody. That was the nature of the communist system. This country is a utopia. It is a wonderful, wonderful place. And when you have sinister people who would walk up to others who are simply Jewish, that was the only identifying feature of us, that we're two Jewish people in a place where our friends and family had just been slaughtered, and to use that sort of obscene language, it's just not on. It's just not what this country is all about.
Yeah, you see, when you have, you just said it. You obey the laws of the land, enjoy the wonderful country, the opportunities it has for you, and the culture. We often mention the word culture, but it's also a country that separates the church from the state. Now, if you belong to a radical religion where the church is everything, and if part of the teachings of that church is to annihilate anybody who doesn't believe in what you believe, then you've got a massive, massive problem. And I'm not talking about all Muslims. That would be ridiculous. I think about the Muslim man, Ahmed al-Ahmed,
Yeah.
who disarmed a man and saved God knows how many lives. He's a Muslim and a proud Australian. So we've got to make that clear. We've got to make that clear. So
absolutely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
But look, it's a very powerful and important point you make, Luke, because all people of sense and decency can look at their good fortune to be called Australians, to live with extraordinary levels of freedom and economic opportunity in this country, the freedom to pursue whatever they want in life, and to try to preserve it and enhance it and to contribute to the greatness of this country through its wealth and culture and science. But some people are so hateful or so foolish that they want to tear it all down. They want to burn it all to the ground. That's what I see in the anti-Israel movement. That's what I see in anti-Semitism in this country. I see a profound hatred. I think foremost a hatred for themselves, which then they project outward at the Jewish people and whoever else they want to blame for the failures in their own life. And so much of anti-Semitism has been about that throughout history. It has had so little to do with who the Jews truly are. And in fact, the Jews are kind of given this like mythical status. Every slur and every negative quality that you want to cast at a people are given to the Jews, and that's what's hated. But the Jewish community in this country has been here since the very beginning of European settlement. There were some 14 Jewish convicts on the First Fleet. We adore this country, we contribute to this country, and we're going to continue to fight for the soul of this country.
Okay, I've got a question for you. Should the footbridge at Bondi, at Archer Park, should it be demolished?
So when the issue first arose, I spoke to the families of the dead to gather their views. They believed and I believed that it should remain. And the reason for that being that the physical signs of an atrocity, of a horrific crime, they need to be preserved. As unfortunate, as uncomfortable as it may be to look at, once you start destroying the physical evidence, the memory of it fades. And that's when you start getting people denying and distorting and so forth.
They said the same thing about Auschwitz. And I say that with respect. I'm not, I say that with respect. If they had demolished it and completely razed it and built over it, I think the fact that Auschwitz is still there is so important. I disagreed with you when this first came up with Wallara Council because I wanted to get rid of it. And I'll tell you why. Because of influencers on social media and dickheads, who would have loved to have had their photos taken on that bridge, in front of that bridge, and possibly use those photos as some form of anti-Semitic post online. I wanted to take that opportunity away from them. But then I thought to myself about Auschwitz and Dachau, and I thought about the memorial at Pearl Harbor, and I think about the memorial in Kuta, in Bali. If you get rid of these things, you demolish history. So I've kind of done a wrestle with myself, Alex.
I've kind of gone the other way, Luke, to be honest, because what you've just articulated was exactly my view. And I did have in my mind the killing sites of Europe, where if you travel through, for example, Poland or Latvia, Lithuania, it's not merely just the big camps and the ghetto sites that are the testaments to the Holocaust and the slaughter of Jews, but every town and village will have a mass grave, a Jewish cemetery where Jews were buried alive. And these things, you want to forget them, you want to move on, but they need to be preserved so people know what happened, and to also honor the dead and to ensure that their memories aren't forgotten. So that was what was firmly in my mind. But at the same time, personally, I've not been able to walk on that bridge.
No, I don't blame you.
And
I don't want to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been, for a long time, I even avoided going to Archer Park. It was too painful to go there, but now I've been there several times. I just stand there and I look at that bridge. I've been at that Hanukkah event every year for as long as I can remember. And I know the smells and the sounds and the sights. It's just joy. And it's summertime Sydney by the beach, and it's families and it's petting zoos and jumping castles. And I stand there, I can still feel it and hear it. And then I look at that bridge and I visualize these two animals standing there with hunting rifles, just firing round after round into the bodies and into the brains of the elderly and children. I just can't fathom it, really.
No, I can't.
I mean, it's beyond the realm of human comprehension that someone would seek to do that someone would yield up their own liberty and their own lives to just slaughter people like that. And to what end? What did they think they were going to achieve? What have they achieved? Did they think it would lead to the Jewish people fleeing this country? Israel packing up and disbanding, that it would lead to a global caliphate. I have no idea what runs through the mind, and I guess I can't know because I'm not a psychopath, but this is what these people were compelled to do. All they did was deprive people of their children, of their husbands and wives in old age, and really torment and torture this community. But we're not broken. And anyone who thought that we would crumble and turn to water over this, they've seen a Jewish community that is devoted to its Jewish identity, that is devoted to Israel, and foremost is devoted to being Australians. We adore this country, we love this country, and we're not going to let vicious murderers change who we are.
I'll tell you a story which I've told before. A lot of people have said I did the wrong thing, but I don't care, I did it. In 1986, I took a group of listeners, radio listeners, on a trip to the United States. It was called the Luke Bona Big Kids Tour of America. One of our stopovers was Hawaii, and obviously we went to the Pearl Harbor Memorial. And so just remember, this is 86. Now, my father served 2 years in the army. He turned 18 in 1945. I have an uncle who fought in New Guinea, came back with terrible wounds.
Yeah.
And there at the Pearl Harbor Memorial was this huge tapestry, a tile mosaic of the Battle of the Pacific. And at low tide, you can still see ships that were sunk at the bottom of the harbour. Honolulu was a huge Japanese honeymoon stayover. And there were these young couples that would have been in their late teens, early 20s, hanging off and climbing on top of this memorial.
Yeah.
And taking photos. No selfies back then. They weren't mobile phones. They were old-fashioned cameras. But taking photos and blowing kisses and waving and smiling. And I got the shits.
Yeah.
Because I felt they were being disrespectful. And I went up to their tour guide and I said, do these young kids understand it's their grandparents, their grandfathers, their uncles that made this memorial possible? And they should be showing more bloody respect. And I got really upset.
Yeah.
I got a round of applause from every tourist there. And maybe I was wrong, but I had to say something.
No, Luke, you were absolutely right. And this is really the point. When you see conduct which we know violates norms of decency of how human beings should behave, you've got to say something. And I've been in this position too many times in my life.
They needed I nearly swore. I'll get taken off YouTube. They needed a history lesson.
That's right. And you know, sometimes we replay moments like that and we think I should have said this, I should have said that, I could have been more restrained, more articulate. It doesn't matter. What matters is that in the moment, you stand up and you say something. The offense and the hurt that you felt in that moment was legitimate because you know what that site represents. It represents people who fought and died for something worthwhile. And you can imagine how I felt at the massacre site when this woman comes up and starts using the same language that the killers used. They recorded a video, and I have to use the word allegedly because it'll no doubt be tainted in evidence, but they recorded a video before carrying out the massacre speaking about evil Zionists. And to have a woman in the same spot using the same language and the same slurs that animated those murderers, we weren't going to stand for it. And that's why it's important to stand up, because you're not standing up for yourself. You're standing up for what that place represents, and you're standing up for the values of this country.
The Royal Commission is due to come out on the 14th of December. What do you hope will happen? What do you think the findings will be? But here's the ultimate question for you, Alex Ryvchin. What do you think the learning will be, and can things be repaired?
Well, look, I have to go back to why we called for the Royal Commission to begin with. The reason was it was twofold. The families and the victims demanded accountability. They wanted to know how this was allowed to happen, how two people living half an hour away from where they were in Sydney could take legally acquired weapons and slaughter people at a park on a beach. What failures contributed to that to ensure that this never happens again? So that's kind of the first element.
Can you change an ideology though?
No, you certainly can't. You can't. We shouldn't undertake the exercise of de-radicalizing radicals, of trying to convince or re-educate anti-Semites and violent extremists. It's a fool's errand and we shouldn't do it. But we can protect ourselves from them through border control, through national security, through intelligence, and through enforcement of the criminal laws. That's what we have to do. But the overwhelming majority of Australians aren't that. They're not radicals. They're not anti-Semites. They're not hateful people. But everyone is susceptible to that. And when you have so much misinformation swimming around social media and the mainstream media at times as well, we have to build durable, resilient, rational minds in our youth to withstand that nonsense. So it's a mixture of enforcement and consequence on the one hand for those who can't be changed and helped, but also outreach and education for the overwhelming majority of Australians. So on the one hand, what I hope will come from this process is we'll see what failed in terms of perhaps policing, border control, exchange of information between agencies and what can be done better. But also the purpose of the Royal Commission was to go beyond the massacre itself and to look at what's been happening in this country, particularly since October 7, with antisemitism and social cohesion. One positive that's already happened, I believe, is that there's now greater awareness of the depth of the problem. It's not merely Bondi, it's not merely the fire bombings, it's something which is nestled in schools and universities and cultural institutions. The real question is, can the Royal Commission recommend things that actually drive it out and affect change? And that's what remains to be seen.
I hope we see change. Very hard to change a radicalized ideology.
Yes.
I guess then this plays to my next question then. Do we invite people into this country that believe in that ideology? And of course, I'm referring to the ISIS brides. I don't know how radicalized they've become. Recently, the woman in Victoria that achieved bail, there's footage that she shot of her teaching her young child how to use weapons in a terrorist fashion, which is frightening, but she was granted bail. And of course, these women have young children. Have they been radicalized? So what safety nets do we put up to make sure that a radical ideology full of hatred that cannot be changed from a radical ideology where the highest honor is for you to be a martyr, because that's extraordinary. How do we protect our borders?
Look, I think we'd be mad to have these people back in our country. I think we would have to be insane to do that. I mean, we have a situation where we've just had people who adhere to that ideology, that same group, ISIS, carry out this slaughter. We know that when ISIS emerged in Syria and Iraq...
But do we know that those women weren't coerced? Because we know in Iran and Syria and other countries that practice radical Islam. Radical, I'm saying the word again, folks. I'm not putting a blanket over all Muslims. But people who practice radical Islam and Sharia law, women are regarded as nothing. How do we know those women went there fully of their own will? They're Australian citizens, so constitutionally it's a massive battle. They're Australian citizens.
Yeah.
How do we know they weren't coerced?
I think we have to begin...
Is that a fair question? Is that a fair question?
No, it absolutely is, Luke. It absolutely is a fair question. But I think we have to begin as Australians to start looking at the welfare and the interests of the majority. And maybe some or several of these ISIS brides were enslaved and compelled. I don't think there's any evidence of that. But we have to look at the threat posed by people who either willingly or unwillingly found themselves in the territory of a terrorist organization for a decade or more, who were steeped in that tradition, who know nothing but that tradition, and the risk that they potentially pose to this country. Now, we know as a fact that two adherents to that ideology carried out the worst terror attack on Australian soil ever. We know that when ISIS was formed, hundreds of people from our country willingly went there to fight with them, knowing exactly what they were about. And we know that there are hundreds or thousands more that remain that share that ideology. And so to add and exacerbate that problem by bringing more people when clearly our authorities are already struggling to keep track of those who are already here, I think is deeply foolish. We have to look again at the obligations of this society, of the state, to protect its citizens and to keep it from harm. And obviously there's a clear risk posed by ISIS and anyone who adheres to that ideology. And I think we have to take it with profound seriousness.
We've nearly run out of time. Is there anything you'd like to add?
The one point I want to make, Luke, and we've obviously covered a lot of ground historically and in terms of what's going on right now in our country, I feel like there's this resentment that's arisen from the focus that's given to the Jewish community and the fight against anti-Semitism. It's in the press all the time. We don't want to be in the press all the time. We didn't want October 7. It was one of the most horrific things we lived through. We certainly didn't want to see that level of hatred then imported here and played out on our streets. We didn't want the fire bombings of synagogues. We didn't want the firebombing of my former home, of childcare centres, the abuse of people on the streets. We don't want any of this. We don't want high fences and security cameras or a cent in security funding. We don't want any of this. All we want, all we've ever wanted, the Jews that have been here since the very beginning or that have come from the Soviet Union or Arab lands or from South Africa,
or
is to live in freedom. Exactly. Is to live in freedom, practice our faith, and contribute to this country. That's all we've ever wanted. That's all we've ever done. We don't want or need any special treatment. We just want an even playing field. When you have a situation where we can't gather in a park to mark a festival and have a children's fair without returning in body bags, something's wrong with this country. When you have a situation where Jewish kids are given a whole set of security briefings before going on a school excursion to a museum or a gallery, something is not right in this country. We want to fix that. And we want to get back to a situation where whether you're a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim, or a person of no faith, you're treated equally and given a fair go. That's all we want in this country.
Alex Ryvchin, thank you so much for your time. I hope you feel as though you've been given a fair go.
Absolutely, Luke. Thank you for your compassion and for your wisdom. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Oh, I'm ignorant. That's why I
Not
need
at
education.
Not at all.
Truckie Tuesday is up next, and it's all made possible thanks to GME, the Aussie experts in communication tech for over 65 years. 10-4, good buddies. Whether you're passing vital road info onto the convoy, calling out a hazard ahead, or telling old mate to get off Channel 40 because it ain't a bloody karaoke bar, GME's got the gear to keep your connection steady and crystal clear. Truckie Tuesday is straight ahead.
From the city to the bush, this one's for you.
Yeah. Hello, Casino. And welcome. This is a bit of a strange experiment for us. We've done outside broadcasts before, but never on this scale. It's the Bonafide podcast, which started on the Triple M network before they punted me. And we thought, well, let's keep it going. And what happened was Triple M, about 10 years ago, said, I was on 2GB, and they said, how would you like to come over to Triple M and you can talk about whatever you want and you get to play Cold Chisel and Led Zeppelin at the same time? And I said, where do I sign? And they said, by the way, you've got 71 transmitters around Australia to play with. I said, that's dangerous. I said, have you checked your insurance? But we were there 10 years. And during that period of time, a bloke who's now become a very good mate of mine and my family's is Rod Hannafy from Truck Right. And Rod at the time was the president of the National Road Traders Association. And he rang me up and he said, do you understand that you've got a lot of truckies that listen to you overnight around Australia? And I hadn't put any thought into it. And I said, well, truckies like Slim Dusty. And I might be a bit rough for them. He said, no, some of them do like Cold Chisel and Jimmy Barnes. And we developed a relationship. And in fact, we made it a regular thing called Truckie Tuesday. And I said this the other night over at the Royal, at the sponsors' dinner. I became educated. And before then, I was just a motorist on the road who thought trucks were a big bad pain in the arse. And every time you'd look at the news, if there was an accident, they always had a close-up of a truck, whether it was the truck's fault or not. So I became educated. And thank God I did. Because everybody on the road has to negotiate trucks and caravans. And my wife driving. And it's a jungle out there. Let alone my stepdaughter, Kelsey. A round of applause for Kelsey Menzies, the millennial, who puts all this together. And those of you who did listen to the night shift on Triple M, the Minister for War and Finance, better known as the Leader of the Opposition, is also right there. Hello, darling. And we're very, very privileged to be here at Casino. I had no idea how big this was. And Vaughan McDonald is the general manager of the council. And we couldn't... So they invited us to come to Casino, and then there's no accommodation. And we said, that's okay, we'll stay in Byron Bay. And Vaughan said, no, come and stay at our house. And he did, and he's very, very generous. And he's here with us now. Put your hands together for the General Manager of Richmond Valley Council, Vaughan McDonald. So a little bit later, we're going to bring back something from the past, from Triple M. Hands up, who remembers the quickie? Look at that sea of hand. Oh, there's more. We're going to bring back the quickie, and I'm going to play a little bit of a song, and we're going to look out for hands, and you're going to tell me the name of the artist and the name of the song, and if you get it right, the Millennial has a Bonafide podcast prize pack for you. And we're going to give some things away throughout the next hour. So we're here for an hour. Thank you very much. This is going live on YouTube, Spotify, and anyone else who dares to take the Bonafide podcast. So you can tell your friends, tune in now to YouTube or Spotify, and you can watch all this happening live without a safety net. Can you put your hands together for Rod Hannafy? My brother from another mother. I said to you today and yesterday, I had spent a long time in Bathurst and looking at the Bathurst 1000 Festival, which is huge, but it's a completely different feel. Because back in my day, it was Holden versus Ford, and come 9 o'clock at night, it wasn't pretty. Whereas this is a brotherhood. And that's what I've learnt the trucking industry is it's a brother-sisterhood, where you have a common goal. You might drive for different companies, you might drive a different truck, but you're all together in the plight that is the trucking industry, and having to detail and negotiate the NHVR and overzealous policemen and every other thing. And you wonder why we're running out of young truckies. You wonder why we're running out of apprentices. Where's the next generation of truckie going to come from if the rules and regulations are scaring people away? And I said this the other night, Vaughan, if you look at the current crisis going on in the Middle East and the price of diesel, let alone the petrol for your cars, if the trucks stop, the country starves. Because Coles and Woolies and Aldi and everyone else in between won't get groceries. That's just a basic level of understanding how important the trucking industry is. And Rod, I'll let you rant for a second, but I was thinking the other day, having spoken to many owner-drivers just here this weekend and on the phone on Triple M, here's a question. How do you make $1 million a year as a truckie? And the answer, it dawned on me. You start with $3 million.
Absolutely
Are
right,
you with
mate.
me?
Oh, yes, and that's it. It's a hard life. You spend a lot of time alone. And, of course, all of these people, some of them have spent weeks to get their trucks ready to come here. They're not earning any money while they're here, so the truck's off the road, but they're supporting the industry. They've made that time and effort and that commitment to come here, and we thank very much Casino for giving us that opportunity.
Yeah.
There's a number around Australia, but this, they say, is the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, isn't it?
Absolutely, the
Vaughan,
greatest.
the microphone goes up here. Well done. Vaughan, what makes this so big? I mean, why Casino? Why have you had to cap it at 550 trucks when I'm told by Darren Goodwin you could get 850, 950? Why Casino, and how come you do it so well?
Look, the key is, from the start, volunteers. So it started out with a group of volunteers, obviously passionate about the trucking industry, around 15 or so years ago, and they came together, loved trucking, and in those days it was 100, 150 trucks. Just coming out of COVID, council got involved, so our events team administer and support our volunteer committee, who are the people that are out there today that have made sure that you've parked your truck up in the right spot safely, and there's a band of probably 30 or 40 work with our team, and Casino is it's a transport hub. It's well located for that, so it's got a long history of trucking. But really, it's come down to some volunteers back in those days, came up with an idea. The community has got right behind it. And as you can see today, community, businesses, everyone's got behind this. Our community have come out, but it's really great. I can walk up this street and I hardly know anyone because there's so many people visiting our area. So from a council perspective, this is really important to boost our local economy, to show to people what Casino and the Richmond Valley can offer. It just gets bigger every year. Last night was, we tried Friday Night Lights last year, and we knew there was something in that from how it came together. So we've extended it, and having nearly 400 trucks on the street last night was amazing. We'll keep supporting it. We love the fact that everyone comes to Casino from far and wide. We hope you keep coming. And we'll keep looking to do something different, something special. Like having your podcast here, Luke. It's great to have Bonafide in town. So, we're loving it.
Well, mate, thank you. You've made us more than welcome, and thank you for opening your house to our crew. And can I just say this, the damage is only superficial, and your insurance, I'm sure will cover it. Please, Vaughan McDonald, the General Manager of the Council, and your team is unbelievable, and Tian and the rest of them, just sensational. So thank you very, very much. We've got other guests coming up. We've got the Quickie coming up soon. Just down from us here, there's a display, and it's Trucking with CJ. Now, you remember, Rod, CJ contacted us on the night shift at promoting trucking for women, and I call them truckettes. And she'll be joining us very shortly. I also worry about the future of the trucking industry, and if we don't start breeding and encouraging young Australians to want to become truckies, and I just wonder, and if you've got a question, if there's something you want to say, Kelsey is here, the millennial, come up and we'll give you a microphone and you can have your say on the podcast that's heard not just around Australia but around the world, and it's live now. I wonder, because you're going to meet Fergo. We're going to meet Fergo in a second. He's a character. He's from Broken Hill, and his dad's a truckie. His mum's just a delight. Fergo is here. He's 14, and he is a fanatic, and he's the future. And his dad's a truckie. And I just wonder, how many of you who drive became a driver because of your dad, or your uncle, or your granddad? You. Anyone else become a truckie because it's in the family, it's in the blood? Or did you just think, this is going to be a good job, and now you're thinking, geez, is it worth it? Rod, that generational growth, if that doesn't continue, we are going to have to employ more truckies from overseas, because without the trucks, the shops are empty.
So they do, mate. And there you go. So look, young blokes don't come into the industry for a number of reasons. I'm sure you all know that the Heavy Vehicle National Law number 2 comes in on the 2nd of August, tomorrow, and we're all looking forward to those increased fines and penalties. There are some good things in there, not a lot, but look, from my point of view, the trouble is we didn't get listened to as truckies. They listened to the wrong people, and again, the problem that we have is most of the laws and the penalties that we operate under are designed and policed by other people. They don't have to live under them. So, that's one of the things. In the past, you could take your kids in the truck and they spent time with you in holidays and all those sorts of things. You've got a problem with insurance now where you can't do that. So that's made it harder to get your kids involved. And of course, the other thing is, how many people want to live in a truck 6 days a week, Luke? You go away, you miss your family, you're not there. You've got the motorists trying to kill you, the NHVR trying to take your money off you, and then you've got to survive and do the job, and you've got to be compliant with all these laws that other people simply don't have to live with. So it's a whole change in where it was, and how do we fix it for the future is the problem.
Are these changes more positive? Because they've gotten rid of some legislation, but they've put more than twice back.
Mate, no, they dropped 21 fines, and those fines should never have been that high in the first place. You compare them to standard road fines, and ours are 10 times over what they are. They have increased 50 fines, and not just by the same level as they dropped the others, they more than doubled those fines. So they say it is only a maximum court-imposed fine, but that will have a penalty on the road. It will increase slightly. And so far, I've found so many people that have been threatened with those maximum fines already. And whilst they say it's a maximum court-imposed fine, we know that if you get pulled up in Victoria and you live in Queensland, the copper knows that you're going to struggle. You can't afford the 3 days off to go and fight the ticket. Then you've got to get legal representation. You're going to lose the money. And to be fair, how many judges have any idea what it's like living on the road? There are good judges out there, there are good coppers, and there are bad truckies. We all know that. Nobody's perfect. We aren't all perfect either. None of us should claim that. But the way that the industry is going, We are scaring people away with the penalties. We are making it harder for them to get involved. The graduated licensing system is a good thing to get people up through the ranks, but it means it takes so long to get them into the industry. They go away and do something and we never get them back. And then, of course, you've got the insurance. It means you can't let your young bloke drive and you can't get them involved. We can't even get a forklift ticket at 16 to get people working into the depots and the yards and then bring them into the trucks.
So it's kind of like, go out and fight, but let me tie your hands behind your back at the same time.
Both, yeah.
And it's very, very frustrating. Incidentally, one of our great sponsors is Hughes Law, Belinda Hughes.
Yep.
And if you are in trouble, just Google Hughes Law. Belinda is sensational. She works directly now for the trucking company,
Yes,
for the trucking industry.
She did work on the dark side.
Well, she was on the dark, Belinda Hughes, Hughes Law, and she was a police officer. She has worked in prosecuting gangs. She was a prosecutor for the NHVR, but she's come to the good side.
Yes.
And now she defends truckies, and she knows how the system works. So Hughes Law, just look it up, Belinda Hughes. And GME.
GME. And so on the back of my trailers, any of you that know the trailers I tow, there's a thing that GME supported a number of years ago, and it says the open road is an ideal place to open up. We know that when you're here and you're having a good time and there's a lot of people and family, it's one thing. When you're out on the truck on your own, in the middle of the Nullarbor alone, in the middle of the night, and something goes wrong, it's a whole other deal. Mental health is something that's been ignored, and the fellow actually saw the sign on the back of the truck, called me up, and he has a little book. And his name is Stuart O'Neill, and it's a thing called The One Last
You see, that's
Reason?
proof size does not matter.
So he found my phone number, called me up. He actually owns the Deepwater pub, and he is trying to do something about mental health and help truckies, wants to be involved, so he's given me a copy of his little book. And again, that's where signage on trucks does work. He saw it, he rang up, he's interested. So hopefully he can help some others as well.
Exactly. Now, I want to meet another guest, but we're going to bring back something from the Triple M night shift. Who remembers the quickie? Look at that sea of hands out there. So the millennial's going to play a little bit of a song. I need you, General Manager, we'll keep an eye out for the first hand up. We need the name of the song, we need the name of the artist, and the first person to come up here to Kelsey and give us that correct answer wins a Bonafide podcast show bag. Okay, as they used to say in Romper Room, ready please, Mr. Music. Wow! Can we do it again? Can you play that again? Anyone? It's a truckie song, but it's not Slim Dusty. Do you get it? Can you pick it?
I know you have some favourites, Luke. I know there's a couple in there.
Okay.
I know it's Aussie.
Come on
it's
up.
Aussie, isn't it?
Has he got time to... Can you go to him, Kelsey? We'll come to you. That's how versatile we're here. Nikki, can you take the...
Put your hand up again.
Little doggy.
With the dog.
At
over
the front.
there. Straight across.
Okay, one more time, Kelsey. Here it is. What song is that? It is Cold Chisel, Ship and Steel. Travelling down the open road, Steel Pig's my only love. From the Breakfast at Sweethearts album. Congratulations. So that's the quickie. We're going to do another one a little bit later on. However, we want CJ. We want CJ. A round of applause, please. Trucking with CJ. She has her own microphone up here, but now she's got two. Take a seat. G'day, mate. How are you? Now, we couldn't help but notice your big setup right next to the council area up there. Welcome to the Bonafide podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, it's a fantastic setup. I know Rod's got lots of questions. Okay. What is trucking? Because you contacted us on Triple M.
Yeah, a fair while ago, yeah.
It was a while ago. And did we get back to you? Oh, no. This is like that Ellen thing. I invited you to the birthday party. Tell us about trucking with CJ.
Well, me as a person, I'm Casuarina CJ. I've been a truck driver for 10 years. About 3 years ago, I just started sharing stuff on some content online, just about what I do for a job as a fuel tanker driver, and it's just growing from there.
A tanker wanker, they're everywhere, aren't they?
Any tanker wankers here, please, ladies and gentlemen? Very dangerous job.
Hey.
How did you get started? I mean, you don't think of a young, attractive woman driving tankers. How did that happen?
Oh, it was a big career progression to get to tankers because you can't just jump into dangerous goods. Started off as a concrete truck driver at 26. I was an insurance broker for 7 years before I decided to leave white collar to go to blue collar. Started driving concrete trucks, progressed through the licenses to truck and dog tippers, then went from truck and dog tippers into fuel tankers, got bored of one trailer, went to multi-combination, started driving triples, doing that, and then went to the west driving side tippers in the mines, did a grain harvest for them, and now I drive for Scott Taylor Motorsport, taking Porsches around the country.
Yes, and so it was less than 2%. It has increased. So Heather Jones over in the west, she's been really successful in getting young women into trucks. There's not that many others. DeVal's at Goulburn, they had a program to get young women in. So from where you sit, outside of the fact that we don't have enough facilities for women on the road, which is one of the big drawbacks, how do you see that we get more women? So let's get really controversial. How many of you think that men are better drivers than women?
Oh, they got their come on. Who thinks women are better drivers than men?
Oh, look out. There you go.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's surprising.
Yeah. Honestly,
No, but because they've got their husbands next to them. Yeah. But look, seriously, it's not the sort of occupation that's traditionally that has women working for it. So when you're out there on the road, do you get respect?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the road is just one big extended family for me. Obviously, there's a small percentage of time that's not friendly, but honestly, I've loved it. I know that not everyone has a great experience, but I don't talk just to the women. I just try to inspire everyone and show that it is a place that we all belong, no matter what your gender is. If you want to do it, there's no reason why you can't do it. I feel like if we just try and make programs for women only, we are really pigeonholing ourselves and we're not being allies with each other. So if we just make programs that are accepting of everybody, then we, if I've been in this industry long enough that my mates and all that are men and they trust me, so they have open, honest conversations. If a woman has a foot up to get in the industry, like they get their free licenses, then they've already lost their allies in the industry because they're like, well, the men had to work really hard to get their licenses and pay for it. So let's just open it up that we are showing that. I'm hoping that just by me showing up as a woman is enough for people to know that they can belong here too.
So in the States, they have a really big program of getting veterans into the trucking industry because they've left the war and we don't need people fighting on the ground now. But it's something that we don't really have as much of here. And outside of Heather and success and those things, there's not a lot of many programs. There are industry state programs where they get young people in, but we've been waiting for an apprenticeship for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah, I actually think it's surprising how many programs there are, but people just don't know about it. So there's the Iron Women's as well, that's for everybody. There's a lot of programs that just don't have the reach to get the message out there that they're around. And there's a lot of companies who do have internal great programs as well. So I'm actually working on my website, which will become a resource centre to be able to promote those great resources that are out there.
So then what's the one factor that's stopping people being aware? Is it simply that they're not looking for them or they aren't in the right place to be found?
I think that there's, like, at a lot of conferences, we're talking to the management level, yes, and it's not getting down to on the road. So I'm very privileged in the fact that I have a beautiful online community, over 300,000 people, that I'm hoping that I'm getting that message from top to bottom, yep, and it's not getting caught halfway. And I think that they're just hidden. They're not, like, unless you know where to find it, you don't know how to find it.
So then the next thing is the way that we deal with the public. So this is the only time, unless you pull up at a truck stop and somebody walks up to you and says g'day or asks you, oh, geez, your truck's pretty, mate. How do we get to the public and get them to understand and have a little bit of empathy? We don't want them all to stop on the side of the road, but we want them to understand that we're in a bigger vehicle because they've never been taught to share the road with us. We know they make mistakes. We know they don't understand trucks, but until we get them to recognise the job that we do and the contribution we make, and at the start Luke said, without trucks, Australia stops.
Yeah, I think that truck drivers are very good at talking to truck drivers. So here, unless you're a truck driver, why would you know that this even exists? So for me, in my small 1%, what I'm doing is social media, creating content that talks to the everyday road user from a truck driver's perspective. And online, we always see the negative. Like, we'll show a stuff up and say, don't do this, this is what will happen. Well, how about we lead with positive example? Let's show how to do it properly instead of what will happen if you do it wrong. There's so many people just wanting to point fingers and show muck-ups, but we've all been there. Back in the day when trucking was a little bit better, you pulled over and helped your mate. Seeing someone break down, you pull over and you help them out. Don't go past and hold your phone up. I seen an incident in Geraldton in WA where a road train had got taken the wrong turn and he got caught in a roundabout. And you know what? A truck driver got his phone out and took a video and thought he was a big dude, like, But like, how about you pull over and help that person out? I've nearly done that. You can easily, like, if you've been doing really big weeks, it's very easy to miss your turn off. And then what do you do? So it's very disappointing to see that people are so quick to jump on social media to show stuff ups instead of working together to try and show, hey, like, let's do this better. So I've just got sponsored by Ford Australia, and I've got a whole lot of campaigns that I'm filming myself to be able to show from a car's point of view how they can be safer around us.
So there's something that's missing in our new law. It's all stick. There's no carrot. So, you know, how do you say to someone who has a good record? In New South Wales, you're allowed one mistake every 10 years. Not every state does that. Not everybody even knows that exists. But you can be out there all day, every day, doing the best you can. You make a mistake, someone's going to film it. You know, they're a hero, you're an idiot. But then the rest of the community don't see the good. They only see the bad because that's what ends up on media. And they don't recognise what we do. But this new legislation, you have to get in and get some carrots for us because there's not much out there.
Yeah, and there's always the ongoing debate, and I'd love your feedback. If you'd like to have your say, let Kelsey know. But in New South Wales, you start with 0 and you get up to 13 demerit points, and then over 13 you've lost your licence. Professional drivers get 14. And the debate, and Rod and I have had this debate, and Vaughan, should professional drivers get that extra demerit point to play with? Should they get 2 more? Or, because they're professional drivers, do they deserve the extra point? They're professionals. This is the debate. I'm playing devil's advocate.
You are.
This is the feedback we get. Should professional drivers be on 13 like everyone else? If you want to enter the debate, I'd love to know. What are your thoughts? You hadn't thought about it. See, I don't tell people what to think. I give you something to think
I've
about.
been a driver. I've had my licence for 20 years and I haven't had a point. So
you haven't had a point?
No.
A round of applause here. How many other professional drivers have never gained a point? You're not old enough to drive a Tonka.
One over there, Luke. Man with the hat over there.
I think for me, I really appreciate what you guys do, talking about all of that.
Well done, mate.
Yeah, but for me, I don't know about legislation. It's not my work. It's not my specialty. I'm good at what I do. I leave that for you guys to.
You've never gained a point.
Well, look, maybe I will now, but...
No, why did I open my mouth?
Put the cowboy shot up.
But I'm very cautious, and I might be the slowest driver in the fleet, but I'll get there safe, you know. And but at the end of the day, like, all I can control is my small little world of just trying to talk to kids, trying to show people that they're welcome, show that, like, I've had a corporate career, I drive concrete trucks, and then I earn more money. I've gained financial freedom from doing this. I've gained really great mates, you know, going to this 4 shows ago, I came to this truck show. I flew up by myself, hired a car. I didn't know anyone. I made so many friends, and through that, some of my best friends now are people I met 3 years ago at this truck show. I met my partner here as well, and this weekend's our anniversary. So you just, you don't know.
Sounds like you're going to move here.
It's our anniversary.
Sounds like she might need to move to casino. Eh? It's all good news. It's a great place.
Great place to bring up kids. A very, very productive, proactive
It's a little
council.
cold for me, but that's okay. But what I'm saying is, like, I am not. I'm not educated enough on legislation or any of these things to really have an opinion. I probably should, but
I was going to say...
I disagree. You're in a perfect position to have an opinion. Your opinion counts.
I think I'm just so tapped out. I don't have time to learn anything else at the moment, but yeah.
But the thing is, if you know, the average bloke sits back and says, it's not my problem, it's not up to me, then nobody does it. And then nobody listens. So the NTC called for submissions, And they, to be fair, if you're a cynical bugger, you'd say they put it out 5 minutes before it was due, and then they could say they called but they didn't get them. But then because only 5 truck drivers wrote in to the HVNL review, oh, well, everybody else must be happy with it, so we're going to do what we want. And I understand what you're saying, and you don't have to do everything. You don't have to spend half your life writing into these things. But if you don't have a say and they don't listen to people who are passionately involved, then we get what they want instead of what we need.
I think that's where the power of social media comes into it, because you can reach more people. You know, like you can put a post up and it can reach a lot more. And so if you make the process a lot simpler, so just break it down like this is one click auto, put your details in and it's submitted. If we have to go and write letters and stuff, it's just not going to happen. I did hear you say something that you wrote this, you talked to a lot of people and they say, yeah, well, I'll do it, but they don't. And I understand how demoralising it can be, like, why do I bother? But if we can just make maybe a little streamlined process, you can have a story on Instagram with one click tap and then, it's a lot of work.
But they deliberately do that. Like for that review, I said, you've got to make this simple so a truck driver can write in and say, I have a problem with the 14-day rule and this is the solution. What they did was they put out a document that has 70 pages of reading before you answered a single question, and there were 7 of those documents. These blokes don't have time to sit down for a week and a half to read that, let alone answer it.
We get 15-minute breaks, and that's running in to go to the toilet and grab a coffee and get back.
Yes.
We don't have time to be sitting reading anything.
Yeah, and they know that. They deliberately do it that way so that we don't get hurt.
Can I ask you another question? Rod and I have talked about this a lot. Anyone who has a comment, please do. The roadside facilities available for professional drivers. Back in the day, there were roadhouses, and it was like Cheers. Everybody knew your name.
Yeah.
Right? And they served healthy food. And you could get a roast and vegetables. And, God, you and your rissoles.
Yeah. Love the rissoles.
But there were roadhouses. And things have changed. And a lot of them have closed down. And I remember Oliver's tried to be a healthy alternative, but not enough people went there. And they're also planted at big service stations with Hungry Jack's, KFC, McDonald's also as an option. Where do you think most people went?
I go to Oliver's, but there are...
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So roadhouses are closing down. And we worry about truck drivers' health. It's a sedentary lifestyle. It's a sedentary profession. And are there enough roadhouses around where you drive? And what are we going to do to bring them back?
Well, I just drove to Darwin and there's some fantastic roadhouses and pubs along the way.
We need to know about it.
Yeah, Barclay Homestead. We stopped at the Blue Hill Hotel. We had a great meal there. There are still great places, and Healthy Heads are doing some really great things, bringing in really discounted healthy meals. And on the screen, it shows you the healthy alternatives. So there are still... There's never been a time that I can't pull over and get a meal if I need it. I understand.
Although at night it's getting harder after 8 o'clock.
Oh, I've been to...
I'm talking about 11 o'clock or midnight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, that's not. But I carry my own healthy meals. So I for my partner and I prep meals. They're all in a freezer. Every week he goes and picks out 4 or 5 healthy meals. We have microwaves in our trucks. So you're just self-sufficient, which we've had to learn to be. And then that feel bad because you're not supporting local businesses. But... you just fail to prepare to fail. So we pack if I go for a road trip or a drive, I pack all my own meals, all my own snacks, and have all my own drinks. So the only thing I get on the road sometimes might be a coffee, but I do have my own jet boil, so I boil my own water and make my own drinks anyway, because at least I know it's going to be good.
A UHF isn't just an accessory. It's a lifeline. It's exactly why I'm stoked to have GME on the Bonafide podcast. They're the only Australian manufacturer of UHF CB radios and emergency beacons, operating right out of a purpose-built HQ in Sydney. You want to know how many locals they keep in steady work? 250. And the gear they build doesn't just keep the Bonafide family safe on the road. It's engineered specifically to handle the bull dust, the corrugations, and the longest hauls you can throw at it. If you love Truckie Tuesday, back the brand that backs us. Head over to gme.net.au. That's gme.net.au. Links are in the description. Let's get back to the chat.
So then we've had the Steering the Future trailer is parked up on the main highway there. They spent all week at the school. And they're doing a terrific job trying to educate kids, show them about getting in the industry. The ATA had that trailer for many years and they struggled to get it out there, and now Craig and Yogi have got into it. They're backing it with Truck and Life, so they're doing a good job. Again, to get to the average member of the public. They're not going to read Truck and Life. They're not going to see them at the school. They're going to see an event like this and hopefully come along and talk to drivers. But we've certainly got to get more of the public to recognise what we do, and we have to educate them when they get their licence about sharing the road with trucks. And why is that? Because we don't want them to make a stupid mistake and bring us into something when it's not our fault, because so often now we get blamed for it when it's not.
And also on the television news, it makes bigger clickbait.
Truck
to see a
accident.
truck.
Yeah.
And then, bloody trucks. When they haven't actually told the story.
Well, I'm part of Steering the Future, and I was at Casino yesterday, and that was our 3rd year going there. And the kids are the best. We have a big assembly. They're all screaming. We're signing hats. We're talking, like going through the little Trucker Down Under magazine that Amanda Kendall is the editor of, and it's awesome. Like, I don't know if anyone hasn't walked up, come and have a look at all the chalk drawings on the ground. The kids are interested. There's a lot of kids here today that don't come from trucking families. So what they're doing by going into schools and just talking to everyday kids, we are hitting them too late if we're talking to 16-year-olds. We need to talk to primary school.
We've got to give them the education at that time before they get a licence, but to get them into the industry, yes, we've got to get them early.
Yeah, but it's both of it, right? Like kids, so I talk to kids and say, when you go caravanning, where do your parents park? And I'm like, if they ever park in a truck car park, do you know what to tell them? So we have a little bit of banter, a little bit of fun, and it's not too young to be talking to kinders or anything like that. I've got a little children's book I've written, and it's just to start that conversation about trucks and identifying that every truck is driven by a person. Everyone's got a name. They've got a family to go home to. Yeah. What is that truck's name, like actual name, and what does it do? So just trying to get those conversations into families that don't talk about trucks. So I think that, and then kids are going to be a bit more aware before they go for their license. Then we can talk to, so down in Deniliquin, there's a fantastic program that happens every year. They go into the schools, they take the kids the whole way through from a crash, and then having to use the jaws of life to pull the kids out. They take them to the police station to show what happens when you have a car, and the whole way through. There needs to be more programs like that. So there are a lot of people doing a lot of really good things. They just need to get a bit more.
I just want to say, Vaughan, thank you so much for having us again, and thank you for opening up Casino. Off the top of your head, what's the average price of a 4-bedroom home, 2 bathrooms in Casino if someone's interested in moving here? Off the top of your head.
I reckon somewhere in the range of about 600 to 700,000.
I would have said
in
7.
the CBD area of Casino. I'm sure we could find something for you. But I will give a shout out to John O'Brien and the team at St Mary's who have really jumped on board with the truck show as well, and to see the fun the kids have there and with the Truck and Life crew. And I think they're the sorts of things that in this community people have jumped on board in a really positive way. That's what we encourage, and today's just the proof in the pudding of what you can do when a community comes together and supports an industry. So we're just really proud to be part of it.
Yeah. There you are. Look, the General Manager of Richmond Valley Council, Vaughan McDonald, thank you very much. I'll see you at the presentation of the trophies. At what time are we doing that? 3:30 or something like that?
Presentations at 3.
Oh, right. So I would have been half an hour late. Thank you, Vaughan. Have you got to rush back to your thing? Because there was someone I wanted you to meet. But if you've got to go, can you stay for a sec? Yeah. Okay. What are we going to do, Kelsey? Shall we continue on? You want to do another quickie? Okay. In the tradition of the night shift on the once great Triple M network, here comes another quickie. I want you to name... Beg your pardon? I want you to name the song and the artist. It's a road trucking song. Can you hear it? Here we go. Do you want to wait till the train goes by?
There's a milli...
Thank you.
That's a millisecond.
Can you play a bit more? Can you...
I think we need more than a millisecond.
The second quickie. Can you go to the second quickie and maybe play a little bit more? Whoa.
That was a bit more.
What was that song? Can you go back to the beginning? What was that song and what's the name of the artist? Whoa, that's enough. Any hands? Okay. 1980, and I used to play Eddie Rabbit Drive My Life, and we used to take. Who here goes back to the Nick Irby the Nick Irby Road Show? No, the Nev Nichols.
Nev Nichols.
It was the Nev Nichols Road Show. Who remembers that? And the Nick Irby Country Music Jamboree.
Yep.
Yeah, we used to play these things back then, and Driving My Life Away.
A lot of Slim. A lot of Slim
And
on Nick.
a lot of Slim, because the lights coming over the hill,
Yes.
they were ruining my day.
Yeah.
There's someone I want you to meet, because we're talking about the future. Do you know Fergie? Do you?
Yeah.
How do you know Fergie?
Oh, I've known Fergie for years, haven't we, buddy?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a young fellow who joined in Truckie Tuesday. He is originally from Broken Hill. His dad, who's here somewhere, is a truckie. There he is. His dad's a truckie. This kid is 14. When are you 15, son? October. He's 14 at the moment. Loves trucks. Looking for an apprenticeship. Wants to be a truckie. Works with Rod when he can. Helps clean the
Came out yesterday and spent 3 hours with me cleaning the truck. So thank
a
you,
round
mate.
of
Much
applause for
appreciated.
14-year-old Fergie, please. The future of Australian trucking. So you know Fergie. Is there something you'd like to ask him before I let you go back to your compound?
Do you like your new T-shirt, Fergie?
He's wearing your shirt.
That's a bit biased.
He's not wearing a Bonafide podcast shirt, you traitor. He's wearing one of yours. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll give you one of ours and we can get one of yours.
Yeah, no worries. No,
Okay.
but what Fergie's passion, the passion he has for the industry is really great, and to see him trying to chase a career in it's good as well. So I have no doubt he'll do well in his apprenticeship when he gets one.
Yes. So, Fergie, you've come in, and that's the trouble. I spoke with you, in the early days, and you only had a couple of mates out of the whole of the kids that he met in school that were involved in trucks. And people don't see it like we did. You went out with your dad, you spent time with him, you're in the truck. And look, a lot of people learnt that way. We can't do it this way, so it's harder to get people in. Even getting young ladies in is something that, we haven't really tackled. Again, in the States, they pursue them particularly. They say that women are gentler on the gear, they're softer, they're more safety conscious than men. We're all 10 foot tall and bulletproof, aren't we? Yay! You and I, at least. So,
Depends on the bloke.
We've got to get young people in, we've got to get them involved, and Fergie's going to hopefully make a life out of it, and it's going to treat him well. And it's these blokes here with these trucks, they've spent a lifetime in trucks. The trucking industry's been good to them, otherwise they wouldn't be here with these trucks worth, $700,000 and $800,000, some of them, for the amount of money that's spent on them. So it can be a good lifestyle, but you've got to enjoy it, haven't you, mate?
Yeah. And what else do I want to do?
Why do you like it?
Oh, it's literally something Dad's done all his life, so I just enjoy him. I couldn't think of anything else I want to do. So, yeah.
You've got to have a passion.
You know what? When Fergie hasn't got a microphone in front of him, like the Chinese last night, you cannot shut him up. You cannot shut him up. So don't be shy. What got you started in trucks? Why are you so passionate? Is it because of your dad?
Yep, mainly because of Dad, but I enjoyed seeing them going down the highway all the time, and a lot of people where I actually grew up, their old bands were truck drivers and their family owned trucks and that, so that also got me into it as well. And then when we moved to Warhope, I started washing trucks and polishing, and then I've just done it gotten further from there.
And that's how a lot of people get into it, through that way. Of course, Broken Hill's not exactly a truck-friendly town. There's a lot of trucks go through there, not a lot of facilities there for them. But you've found a way to get in, get involved. And look, thanks to his mum, she drove him all the way in from Broken Hill to Dubbo to meet Luke and take part in the podcast.
Yep.
So that's a big effort. So you've got to have someone supporting you and helping you, because without that, it's hard doing it on your own.
What's your favourite truck? If you could drive the truck of your dreams when you're old enough, what would it be and why?
Kenworth. Reliable.
Sorry?
Kenworth, they're reliable. So Rod says.
So, of everybody that's here, I made a guess earlier, with outside of some Superliners and a few of John Kelly's Macs, I reckon there would be 80% Kenworths here.
Which are made
Who
in
loves
Australia.
Kenworths?
Which are manufactured in Australia.
They are, yes, in Melbourne and Bayswater.
Yeah.
Yes, been to the plant.
Yeah. And cabovers and bonneted Kenworths.
Yes.
With a little angel on the front.
Only one had the golden angel.
The
Luke
golden-
asked me, why does that truck have a golden angel on the front? I said, because he likes the bloody thing.
So, Fergo, you're 14. What's your next step?
Get a heavy diesel apprenticeship and then drive trucks from there.
And you wanted to one day drive with your dad?
No, I think Dad's a bit sick of being in trucks, so probably not.
So that's another thing. A lot of fathers have said, go and get a trade first. Instead of going straight into the truck, if it doesn't work out, you've got something to fall back on. And of course, if you're a diesel mechanic, you can fix your own truck anyway. Because that's another one of the big costs is the maintenance and putting that time in.
But you're not allowed to work on your own truck.
Yes, you are.
Usually, aren't you? If you're broken down, don't they send someone?
Well, look, we can discuss how the industry has changed, and years ago you'd change your own flat tyre and now some people won't. I had a mate talk to me earlier. He was asked by his company to stay and change 2 flat tyres because the bloke ran over a gutter driving into an enormous driveway that most people would have got in. And they said, oh, you stay and change his tyres. He said, what the bloody hell for? Why can't he change his own? And it has changed. But if you're a qualified mechanic, well, then you can work on your own truck, but you've got to keep the records. And that's one of the things in this new legislation is going to be an SMS, a safety management system. Rather than you write up a policy, you stick it in your cupboard, you leave it there for 20 years and never use it. They want you to have something that's applicable. They want you to have something that you go back to and check and you improve on it, rather than just say, well, I'm a good bloke and I'm doing the right thing and that's good enough.
I wonder, has the camaraderie gone from the highways? Because you keep telling me back in the day, if you're in trouble, someone would pull up, give you a hand, but the deadlines are tight. Drivers may go, here he comes again. It's Thomas. Thank you. Well done. It's a little train ride, the Dinky Die Express. Folks, drivers, let me ask you this. Is the camaraderie out there? If you're in trouble, does someone get on the radio and say, can I stop? Can I help you? Are you allowed to, by insurance, stop and go and help a stranger? Back in the day, when I was growing up in the 1970s, hitchhiking with truckies was the way you saw Australia. You can't take up hitchhikers anymore. Your insurance won't allow.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest changes in the truck industry? And how about we find a hero? Is there anyone here today that has had something brilliant happen to them? Let's stop talking about the
bad
assholes.
side, let's go positive, yep.
Let's go positive. Has anyone here got a story? We'll give you a Bonafide podcast show back. Is there a story you've got where someone has gone out of their way to help you?
And look, we had our mate ring me up yesterday and talk about mental health and that sort of thing. Of course, we all know the bad side. We've seen the car drivers, and on my way out to Vaughan's the other day, had a red P-plater overtake me in a school zone. And P-platers, what are you going to do with them? We can't get them out there. But, mate, the industry is built up of a lot of people. A lot of people have done well out of it, and we do see the good. But a lot of the time, Luke, as you said before, when it's on the press, it's bad. It's a truck accident. That implies guilt by default. And yet there are times when others have said, I've had a lady say, look, I was going down through the Pilliga. This truck was in front of me. He could see I was behind, but he never tried to get her to pass. He knew what she was doing. She was going to use him as the roo guard in front. Yeah. So she followed him all the way for an hour and a half because the roos were thick and thin. And she actually pulled up, gave him a toot at the end and said, thank you. And that stuff doesn't really get recognised. It's always the bad that gets the press.
So if anyone's got a good story, yes, Kelsey.
Just
You turn the microphone on, Kelsey.
Just quickly.
Just quickly, we just have one show announcement.
Yeah, if there is parents by Stephen and Nicole missing your 2 boys, just go to the community centre, please.
All right, and now we do have, I guess, a comment from Jono. From
What's your
Jono,
name?
our song guy.
Jono.
Yeah, my comment is on the side of the road where you pull up and there's plenty of toilet paper on the side of the road. How fun is that?
And Jono, of course, has got one side of his cheek open and the other side not, because it's not sitting there in a roll waiting for someone to use it, is it, mate? It's because somebody couldn't walk out into the bloody dirt 20 metres off the road and go to the toilet because the facilities aren't there. And look, again, many of you have listened to the radio. How many of you have ever rang a road authority and lodged a complaint about a bit of road or a toilet that's not clean or something like that? They don't know. Someone sitting in the office in Sydney doesn't know about the pothole at Burke or the fact that the toilets at Coonabarabran are full of crap or whatever it is. We have to tell them, but we have to do our part.
Well, we also need better phone numbers put on those toilets for that resources.
Yes. But again, there is a state number for each and they will take it. So 13 19 40 in Queensland.
There it is.
13 17 00 in New South Wales.
Hey, John, before you go, what do you drive?
What do I drive? Mac, Superliner, 2024.
And you drive for yourself or a company?
A company, O'Brien Co.
You happy?
Yeah, mate.
They good?
Yeah.
Are
really.
they here?
No, they're not. They're not here, actually.
I was about to say, you're very brave. They'll listen to this. And how did you get into it?
I started with Aggies.
Agitators, concrete mixers.
So I had a bit of a struggle and I went out the bush and back and lived with my father. And from there was this bloke said, hey, we need an Aggie driver, and I gave it a stab and I did it for 7 years and loved it. And then I had an opportunity to go drive for another company, and that was for Wagner's. And I had to go at driving triples and quads and fell in love with it. And I never stood back. The harder I go, the quicker I go. Love it.
But then there is always that level of responsibility. And look, not every employer is perfect. I'm sure you'd all agree. Not every driver is either. And years ago, when there were a lot of drivers about, you could virtually say, bugger this, mate, shove it up your ass, I'm going somewhere else, and you'd have another job tomorrow. It got to the point where drivers are at a premium, and we all know that because we don't have the young people and because there are a lot of people out there with a licence, but they don't want to drive trucks anymore because of all of the things we've said, and because of that we've had to bring people from overseas. Some of them have managed to bypass the system. They all come here because they love this country the same as we do. It's a bloody good place to live. All we ask is that they get trained and tested properly before they're let loose on the road.
I definitely agree with that, with the training and stuff. Do you remember that comment I was talking about on the side of the highway where along New South Wales where they pull you in and I missed the turn-off?
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff we need to learn. Like advertisement, TV, radio, the whole lot. Hey, you need to turn down this road for a truck so you don't miss the weighbridge.
Again, getting out there and like getting anything outside of things that we do, the shows like this where we get people in, it's about money. And they want to take the money off us when we're on the road. We just can't get them to put the money into helping us when we're on the road.
Do you remember that, Jono? Do you remember that TV ad? It was one of the best ads I ever saw. And I probably, it's probably cognitive recognition because now I'm involved with truckies and truckettes. I noticed things I didn't before when I was just driving a motor car. But this ad, it showed how little vision you have up in the cabin. And it had people standing in front and to the side, and the driver can't see you. Now, it was a really simple idea, but geez, it gave everyone else, if I'm here, he can't or she can't see me. It was a simple idea. I would have thought pretty effective. Why can't we have more of that?
Well, that makes a lot of sense because, like, I got a fairly new cab, and there's a pure blind spot on my left-hand side, and I'm missing a complete car, not a small car, a big car, and I can't even see it. And
CJ's done some good stuff like that from in the cab and others, and I will give credit to the NHVR. They have done some campaigns about sharing the road with trucks, but we've just got to get to them more and get them to understand our issues.
I agree with that.
Listen, Jono, lovely to meet you. Can we give Jono a merch bag? We've got an enormous expense here. It's got a thank a wanker. Okay, Kelsey, just talk into the microphone and describe what's in the very, very prestigious, much sought after Bonafide show.
We should talk about the wanker sticker.
It's there.
A stubby holder. Love that. And a thank a wanker sticker.
We started, Rod and I and James Ward from drive.com.au. On the 8th of May, we went national and we started Don't Be a Wanker, Be a Thanker. And it was National Thank You Wave Day.
Yep.
And it got great traction and it'll get bigger.
Yes.
But if someone does something nice, like lets you in, lets you merge, just do that.
Give them a wave.
And it makes their day. And then it will spread and the love will grow.
Well, in America, they don't mess around with road rage. They just get out and shoot you, and we don't want
shoot
that here.
So if someone does something nice, thank them and then pass it on. And that's what it was May the 8th, Make Day. Thank you, Jono. Round of applause for Jono. Safe travelling, brother. Lovely to meet you.
So, mate, there is a Wickham's transport company, and on one of their trailers they have a big sign at the front of the fridge van that says 10 metres in front sits the most important asset of this company, the driver.
Yeah.
Without drivers, none of these things here is worth 10 cents.
Correct.
Because it's not going anywhere. It's not carting any freight.
Yeah.
And we've got to get recognition for what we do. We had a bloke there before who's never had a ticket. Good on you, mate. Well done. CJ hasn't had one. But it is hard. You are out there, the level of exposure. So the average motorist does 20,000 K a year.
Yeah.
We do 200 more, depending on what you're doing and where you're going. And it's simply that level of exposure that you're out there all the time. And you've only got to look, the cameras. Geez, the cameras are multiplying, mate. They're just growing in capacity.
And so too is the revenue.
They are.
So there it is. Just before we go, because our hour's nearly up, Rod Hennepy, Fergo, we got an email from Grant who says, folks, maybe we should be, or someone can do a workshop on etiquette based on the old school days of becoming an operator, not just a steering wheel attendant. Be a lot less accidents involving heavy vehicles, that's for sure. Rod, your response, please. That's from Grant Sheether.
So, mate, what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Vaughan for the next casino truck show that they put out a questionnaire for all the drivers. And if you have one for someone who's a driver, and one for someone from the public. And it's a bit like when I started the Truckies Top 10 Tips. I asked Truckies what we need to share the road to teach motorists. And then we need to know from the motorist point of view what they see as the biggest issue. So we've got, how many people are going to be here? 5,000? 10,000?
Yeah.
Right? We've got a captive audience. We're only asking a couple of questions. So if we ask the drivers, what can we do to make it better? And we ask the public what they want us to do, we will end up with more data, because I could go and ask 10 people here, and if you ask 10 truck drivers for an opinion, you'll get 15 opinions.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. But at least you'd have somewhere to start. They've all come along. I don't think it's too much to ask them a question.
Before we go, because Kelsey's got some more Bonafide music to play, the tail end of... You said you got 2 songs. I want a show of hands, and this will be interesting. A show of hands from all drivers. Do you think the TWU, the Transport Workers Union, is working for you? Are you happy with what they're doing for you? Yes? I got to know. Question 2. The National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, the NHVR. Are you happy with them? Are you not happy with them? Not happy with them wins. So there's some education here.
Long way to go.
There's a long way to go. Fergo, good luck with your career, mate. You're going to be great.
I'm going to need it.
What do you say?
I'm going to need the luck.
You'll be fine, Fergo. And to Fergo's parents who have come Broken Hill's a long way away, and you're on the road and you're living life, a new life, and we wish you all the best. It's lovely to see you again. A round of applause for the millennial Kelsey, to CJ, and to Richmond Valley Council. Thank you for having us. The presentation is coming up at 3 o'clock.
Yes.
And you and I are doing that.
Yes.
550 trucks had to be capped.
Yes.
How do they judge them just before we go around there in an hour, how do they judge them? What are they looking for? And where do they get the judges from to do all this?
They obviously have a trucking background because someone did say there was someone walking around with a little iPad and he was looking at the trucks, going through items. He was putting his hand in underneath the mud guards to see how many people have cleaned in underneath the mud guard.
They'll get complaints from HR if you do that.
There's a whole range of factors. It's not just looks. It's the overall presentation. It's how much effort you put in. It's how many kilometres the truck has done.
And there are different classes. There's age.
Yes.
And there's all that. Because I saw you've got a couple of chips there on the front there.
Yes. Kelsey comes over and says, look at this chip on it. I said, the truck's done 900,000 K. Fair go.
Listen, I've seen the Olympics. You will get marked down by the Russian judge.
Yeah, I'll get punished.
The Russian judge will have you on toast.
Yes.
I'm telling you now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining in. It was the quickest hour. Thank you for joining in another Bonafide podcast. We're everywhere. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. And please, we'd love you to join in. Send us in your comments. Leave us a voice message. And we'll do the whole darn thing again sometime down the road.
Safe travelling to all.
Truckie Tuesday's done. Another journey complete. Thanks to Luke Bona.
Thank you so much for listening to us here on episode 129 of the Bonafide podcast. Myself and the Millennial wish you well. We wish you good health. And we hope that you stick around and share and tell people about the Bonafide podcast because we need all the help we can get.
Do you ever thought of the day, Luke?
I have. And this you will really relate to, Kelsey, knowing you as well as I do. It comes from the great late Sir Winston Churchill. He was asked what was the secret of his long marriage. And do you want to know what he said? He said, we don't talk to each other before noon.
Yeah, I brilliant. Oh, Luke, you know how I'm really grumpy in the mornings?
Yes. That's why
There's a word for it.
That's why I thought you'd like that.
There's a word for it that I came across on TikTok today. So the word is splenetic.
Spell it.
Splenetic. It means irritable, bad-tempered, or grumpy in the morning.
That's you.
Yeah, so you could say Kelsey's a bit splenetic this morning.
That is our word for the day. Spell it for me.
Splenetic. S-P-L-E-N-E-T-I-C.
Hang on, too fast. S-P.
L-E.
Yeah.
N-E.
N-E.
T-I-C.
T-I-C. Splenetic. It's our word for the day. Are you splenetic? Do you live with someone who's splenetic? And is that why?
We'll have a support group available.
So Winston Churchill said, the secret to a long marriage is don't talk before noon.
Goodbye.
Well, that's it. A big, massive cheer for the folk at GME. Thank you for keeping the Aussie transport industry talking. It's engineered specifically to handle the bull dust, the corrugations, and the longest hauls you can throw at it. Head over to gme.net.au. That's gme.net.au. Links are in the description, and we'll see you next week.